Coming up on this episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover.
Andy Reid hasn't had a top 10 rushing offense since 2017, Kareem Hunt's rookie year. He was kind of my over 40 year with Shane McCoy, but I think Kenneth Walker's better than Kareem Hunt was even as a rookie. Last year, 38.8% of Kenneth Walker's yards were explosive yards.
Welcome back to Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. This is the 6th of 8 NFL division previews, and we're on to the AFC West, home of the Broncos, Chiefs, Raiders, and Chargers, or LA Chargers, if you will. I'm, of course, joined by my two wonderful co-hosts, Byron and Joe. We had a break from the division previews last week, but we're back with a bang this week. Gents, how are you both doing? It's been a minute, as they say.
Yeah, great. Yeah. As we are recording, we have got the Hall of Fame game tonight / this week. I'm not 100% sure. I think it is tonight, Thursday the 6th. So, if something major happens in that we don't mention for some reason, I mean, neither of the teams are playing, are in the AFC West, but something major might happen. I don't know. So if we don't mention it, that's why. But yeah, excited football is back. I think like 39 days or something from football. So yeah, we are getting there.
Yeah, first look at Carson Beck tonight for the Arizona Cardinals, I think is what we're going to get. So let's see how that goes. Apparently he's been doing real well in training camp. So who knows, maybe we'll push out Jacoby Brissett for the Cardinals. But that's the other West business. Joe, how are you in the west of Canada, I guess, if we're sticking on theme?
Yeah, doing all good. As Barry's mentioned, it's excited that the football's back, Unfortunately, we've already done the NFC West, so we can't talk about how Trey Benson looks in the Hall of Fame game. They might have to be a world-class running back. But no, yeah, it's all exciting. It's always good to chat about these divisions, and it's always, once you dive into what they've actually done and what they've done across the off-season, because it's very much whether it's like the draft, then the free agency, but there's all these little things, and when you look into the headlines, and then you change your mind about a few teams. So yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into the AFC West, because I think, again, it's another fun one where it feels like top 3 heavy teams, similar to the NFC West, and maybe a one lower one, but at least they're exciting. So that's why I'm looking forward to the AFC West this year.
Well, let's kick off then. We're going to start with the Denver Broncos, if I can talk and get my teeth in, as our team in focus. I'm so excited to get to talk about the Broncos, which is why I keep stumbling over my words. We've got a fantastic guest joining us, Parker Gabriel. He covers the Broncos for the Denver Post. Please ignore halfway through the complete change of scenery. Some technical issues, and we have to stitch a couple of recordings together. But Parker stuck it out with us. And yeah, fantastic insight from Parker on the Broncos. Let's get to it. Kicking off our AFC West preview, we've got a fantastic guest joining us. We've got Parker Gabriel, covers the Denver Broncos for the Denver Post. Parker, thanks ever so much for joining us. Just a note for people that may be listening rather than watching, Parker is at Broncos training camp right now. We're just in the first few days of training camp. In his car currently joining us. But Parker, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, very excited as we're kind of creeping towards the start of the season. We're just past halfway. This is our 6th division preview show. So it means we're real close to football. And yeah. We were just talking about it does look like a lovely warm day. But how is Colorado this time of year? How is it being at kind of training camp in the summer?
Yeah, Colorado this summer's been seemingly like everywhere on the planet, very hot. So we've been on a run here where we've been over 90 Fahrenheit for a couple straight weeks here, and it's going to be like that. We're just getting going. This is the second of 2 acclimation practices for the Broncos. Fans are in attendance for the first time Friday, Saturday, and then we're really into full swing 6 days in a row next week. So it's been a beautiful summer here. It's been a hot summer here, but we have no wildfire smoke at the moment. So all things considered, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's like time for football as those kind of practices and sessions ramp up. Parker, so you cover the Broncos for the Denver Post. Just give us kind of a bit of a shout out. Where can we follow your work? Where can we kind of see all your coverage on the Broncos?
Yeah, denverpost.com/Broncos. All of our stuff. I'm on X, and I think Threads and Blue Sky, all of them. Parker J. Gabriel, you've got it there on the graphic. So that's where you can find me. I'm dabbling with TikTok and all the rest too. So just try to get information to fans however we can.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure you get some great TikTok clips off the back of this session today. And let's get into kind of the Broncos preview then. As we do with all our teams, we'll just start with a quick overview of the 2025 season. 14-3 in AFC West crown and a crazy game that ended up being losing in the AFC Conference Championship game to the Patriots in a very snowy Mile High Stadium. 14th scoring offense and 3rd scoring defense according to Pro Football Reference. I think naturally it all comes down to kind of the AFC Championship game, but how would you kind of assess the season as a whole, Parker? With kind of, 14-win season, a division title, and number 1 seed, all those bits. How was it covering the Broncos for 2025?
Well, I mean, it was a remarkable season in so many ways, right? I mean, I think it sort of frames it by going back even one more year. 2024, Bo Nix is a rookie. You're not quite sure what you're going to get. And for them to, start as slow as they did and then win 10 games and make the playoffs and all of that, that really sort of set them up to have big goals in 2025. And even you guys know the NFL, like you can think you're going to be good. You can think you're going to be a playoff team and all that. And there's still a big difference between that and winning 11 straight games in a regular season. And so as that run went on, you just kept thinking, well, it's going to end at some point. It's going to end at some point. And they kept winning close games. They kept finding ways to win. Bo Nix kept, it was up and down early in games, and then he'd pull some magic late in the game. And obviously the defense was sort of the consistent theme throughout the season. It finally ended sort of with a thud in mid-December against Jacksonville at home. And then, just that the playoff win, the divisional round win against Buffalo was one of the more sort of like exciting, just from the sheer, like the level of play. You've got the Broncos taking the lead with less than a minute left and Josh Allen coming back and getting a field goal. And just like, it was a heavyweight bout. Right. And then Jaquan McMillan makes the incredible interception, and you start to think like this team might really do this year, right? And they punch their ticket to the AFC Championship game, and it's New England at home, and that all sounds pretty good, all things considered. And then an hour after the game, we find out that Bo Nix broke his ankle and that he won't play. It just was like one of the most surreal. I can only imagine how it felt for fans and for Bo Nix and for the other players and the coaches and all of that. Devastating for me. It's just like one of the most wild days on the job that you could possibly imagine, covering a game like that and then news like that right after the game. So it was quite something. And then obviously, even with Jarrett Stidham playing quarterback, like they almost win. They come up 4 points short of a trip to the Super Bowl. And so it was a remarkable year. It's like, by all accounts, obviously a very successful year, and also one that just none of the people involved will forget the sting of the way it ended either.
Yeah, I remember seeing, I don't know if this was common knowledge before, I was late to. Certainly seen this week kind of the come out or seen a story about Sean Payton in that game against the Bills in the divisional round was going to call a fake punt or 4th and 11, and then and in the end they had a really good punt that pinned the Bills deep, got the interception, won the game that way, playing defense, so to speak. But what we know, Sean Payton is a gambler at times. We know he is. Our Saints fans, right, in the Super Bowl. But we know he's a gambler. We know he likes to take chances. But the players kind of took some responsibility for that. I mean, how do you think? What would kind of the headlines have been if Sean Payton would have gone for that and it wouldn't have gone as well? It wouldn't have gone right.
Honestly, right? Like, it would have either been considered, if they get 12 yards and a first down, it would have been considered right up there with the onside, the surprise onside to start the second half of the Super Bowl, with, be one of the gutsiest calls in NFL history. And then, like, conversely, if you get stuffed for 3 yards and you give the ball to Josh Allen around midfield in overtime, like, it would have gone down as one of the most ludicrous and, a lot of people would have said stupidest calls in postseason history. So it's interesting because a couple of weeks before that, Sean Payton was talking about just getting older, and he had been sort of, lightly, I guess, chastising himself in the weeks leading up to the postseason about, he said, sometimes what he said, basically what he said, that's not an exact quote, but it's basically what he said. He said, as you get older, sometimes you are a little bit more cautious about driving in the rain after dark. And that was the metaphor he used. And just was like, I have to be bold. I have to be decisive. I have to be quick. And a lot of that was about his actual just like play calling, right? Which ultimately, this will one of the headlines we'll talk about. He gave that duty to Davis Webb over the course of the offseason, but that was clearly on his mind last year. And so it was very interesting that he had this like just incredibly like, I don't know, reckless, gutsy, whatever you want to call it, call made in a moment like that, in a game like that. And I think ultimately it worked out. So you're like, it's great that the players called it off, but man, it would have been fascinating to see what would have happened if that ball actually goes to, Tyler Bidet as the up back.
Yeah, absolutely could change the one play. Talk about it sometimes in the NFL, but one play can change the course of history. Maybe Josh Allen and the Bills win.
There's a lot of coaches out there too, right? Where there's a lot of coaches where that a call like that, if it goes wrong, could get you fired, right? And obviously Sean Payton's got enough cachet that wouldn't have been the case. But gosh, I think it just would have, if they would have done it and it wouldn't have worked, it really would have changed the tenor of the offseason.
Yeah. Sure. Well, let's get into some of the offseason headlines. Great segue there, Parker, for us. So offseason headline one, Jalen Waddles to Mile High. Denver traded first and a third to bring Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle to Denver. Is that going to take the offense to the next level? They made the trade, obviously, I suppose, relatively early in the offseason. What impact are you expecting Jalen Waddle to have? How is he going to complement or improve this offense?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens is as you get good and as your roster, if you have a deep roster, talented roster, it obviously doesn't matter what sport or what level. If you've got a talented roster, just by definition, it becomes more difficult to improve your roster, right? Like there's not a lot of holes, there's not a lot of bad players or ineffective players, especially that are seeing the field. And so the Broncos, like they found themselves in a spot where they needed something on offense. They needed an explosive playmaker, a guy that could change games. What they really didn't need was like two more guys in that room that are going to be guys, are going to be average players or whatever. And so they paid a premium to get Jalen Waddle, but they were excited about doing so. Honestly, like the cost is never immaterial, but they just were like, they were willing to pay a high price because they didn't need four other guys. They needed one guy that could do that could do everything, that could be a ceiling lifter. And they think that's what Jalen Waddle is. And everyone's excited, to see take the top off the defense and take 175 to the house or whatever. But I think the real week in and week out impact of Jalen Waddle is just, the run after the catch, the ability to give Bo Nix an easy 10 yards or 14 yards, a lot to work in the middle of the field, to be able to separate. And then obviously, for as effective as Courtland Sutton has been each of the last 2 years, he's had two of the best years of his career the last 2 years with Bo Nix and getting from, really comfortable in Sean Payton's system and all of that. But teams could pay a lot of attention to him the last 2 years, and Troy Franklin's a good player. Pat Bryant's a good player. Marvin Mims is a good, versatile, explosive player. But Jalen Waddle's the kind of guy who, you're going to have to decide, do you want the attention on Sutton's side or do you want the attention on Waddle's side? And wherever you put it, the other guy is going to have favorable matchups. And so I think I'm not saying they're going to lead the league in scoring or anything, but it really changes their offense. And I think it changes, you go from thinking, they might have a little bit of a shortage of offensive firepower to now thinking hey, listen, they look pretty good, across the board, basically.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the impact of, we see kind of the two, teams have the kind of the two top tier wide receivers, so to speak. We see kind of how the Bengals utilize it with Chase and Higgins. Probably saw an instant impact of it with the Dallas Cowboys, by the way. But the Cowboys last year when Pickens came in,
absolutely,
and then the matchups and how do you cover Lamb and Pickens and Peace, and that seems to be a bit, a problem that defenses are going to have facing the Broncos now, as you mentioned. You've got to pick your poison and you're going to get burned on the other side.
And it also, Sean Payton and obviously Davis Webb's calling the plays now, but it's, Sean's always been an expert too at getting the ball to running backs. And so now it's okay, well, if you want to play, shell coverage, there's a lot of in the NFL now, and you're going to try to keep both of those guys just in front of you. Well, then you're going to have problems with RJ Harvey and with Dobbins and maybe with Jonah Coleman, the rookie, and all of that. And so he's a guy who, he's an upgrade over what they had at his position. And he also makes the other receivers more effective and more difficult to deal with. And I think he makes life easier for the offensive line and for the running backs and for the quarterback too. Like he sort of, I think he'll lift everybody on the offense.
Excellent. Right, let's head to headline number 2. You've kind of touched on it. Peyton passes play call into protege. A lot of alliteration there. That's difficult to do. Davis Webb takes up play call in amid his head coaching considerations. I suppose any notable changes expected. Touched on it a little bit there. Then, are you expecting to see anything drastic change? I guess it's the same scheme. It's the same philosophy. You'd expect. Is it just subtle changes we're expecting from Sean Payton handing over the baton, so to speak?
Yeah, it's sort of the biggest question of the offseason, I think. And it's interesting because these guys, like, no one's racing up to the microphone to say, hey, this is how the offense is going to look different this year, of course. Like, they even, like, Davis, we talked to Davis in June during their mini camp, and one of the things he said is it's not that often that you have this much continuity and this so much back, and yet you feel like you might be going into the seasons with something like an element of surprise. Because teams don't know. Like, their first games against Kansas City, and Steve Spagnuolo, Kansas City's defensive coordinator, was Davis Webb's interim head coach at one point, like during Davis's playing career. So they know each other really well. They have a lot of respect for each other. Davis probably thinks he knows what Spags is going to call, and Spags probably thinks like, hey, I got to beat on this guy. Like, I know what he's going to be about as a play caller, but really, like, we don't quite know what it's going to look like. I think there's been a lot of talk about it's still Sean Payton's offense. Davis Webb has been, contributing ideas to what Denver's doing offensively the last 2 years. It's not going to be a radical change. I think, and it's just strictly my opinion, I think it's going to be more different than what they're making it sound like right now. Like, I really do. And I think a lot of that has to do with the running game, but the running game then, like Davis Webb, he's got air raid in his background. He's got all sorts of different, like, football things in his background. One of the things that the Broncos, like Sean Payton has said this year, they have to be better consistently running the football throughout games and then over the course of the season. They dropped off a cliff last year when J.K. Dobbins got hurt. I just, like, Sean's thing in the running game has always been sort of like one of my friends put it really well. He called it the gumbo running game from New Orleans. Like, it's a little bit of everything. And the idea is, like, I guess if you do some of everything, then it will work out. My guess is that Davis is going to be a little bit more of, like, not all the way to the Shanahan, like, 50% wide zone or whatever, but I think that they will be more sort of like staple run concept based rather than let's try 14 things in the first half and then take the 3 that we think look best and run them in the second half. Like, I think it's going to be more, let's be good in the outside zone. Let's have that be sort of like the read stuff with Bo Nix. Let's build our operation around that and then play action out of it. And basically, like, I think Davis would like to be more toward the everything looks the same and you can run a lot out of it. Whereas, like, Sean is much more like a different look and a different personnel group every play, so you never know what's coming. So, like, I think it could be a lot of the same stuff and, like, a lot of the stuff from Sean's playbook, but just sort of like the weighting of what comes when and how you sequence it and all that. Like, I think, I don't know, but I think it might look quite a bit different in that regard.
Yes. Yeah, good point about potential change, kind of the presentation of a lot of things. So yeah, it's hard to get tendencies from that, and and if you can do all the different things from the same look, it becomes very, very difficult, even for the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, to be able to stop. Cool. All right, let's head to our third headline for the Broncos. Less is more. A quiet offseason in Denver. Franklin Myers leaves for Tennessee. Alex Singleton re-ups. Jonathan Cooper, the only question on D. Parker, it's been relatively quiet offseason in Denver. Is this a good sign that actually there's no real need for mass changes because of kind of where the team and the roster already is? Or we sort of expecting there might be a few more things to try and push it to get to that last game?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of both, but overall, I don't think anybody expected like massive turnover. They have among the highest continuity in football. I think 94% of their snaps are back from last year, and that's just they kicked the tires on a bunch of players in free agency, and they just decided that especially relative to price points and all that they just preferred to retain most of their own players. Obviously, they made the big splash addition of Jalen Waddle, but beyond that, they just thought, hey, if the conversation is Adam Troutman at 5.7 million or another tight end at 8 to 10 million, they were going to take Troutman back. And that was sort of up and down the roster. That there were some linebackers they liked in free agency, but Alex Singleton's been the guy that calls this defense when he's healthy, since Vance Joseph has returned to Denver as a defensive coordinator. And so just sort of like up and down the decision-making process in terms of players, they ended up mostly coming back to their own guys. So, that's sort of how they handled the roster. Obviously, with Jonathan Cooper, there's a question now about whether he'll be suspended, but the Broncos have made it pretty clear that they're standing behind him as he faces a felony assault charge and 3 other lesser charges stemming from a pair of domestic violence related arrests in June. So it's obviously a serious situation. He likely, regardless of what the outcome is in court, which we don't know what that will be yet, there hasn't been a resolution at this point, he will likely face discipline from the NFL, whether it's the sort of like standard 6-game suspension in these instances, a little bit less, a little bit more. We obviously don't know that yet, but that's been from just like a roster standpoint outside the quarterback, in the injury recovery, that's basically been the biggest story of the offseason, which like it's a serious one. And I don't want to do anything to like downplay the severity of what his ex-girlfriend alleges and all of that. It's been sort of one player that's been at the center of that. And for the rest of the group, you're right, it's been a really quiet offseason.
Yeah. Byron, again, from sort of that position, again, I think the Broncos just seem set, don't they? It's just trying to make that leap. And it's not a big one like we saw how the season ended. It was just a crazy game. And, you can't write that. But, yeah, it feels like they're right there on that edge and precipice of the teams that are kind of going to be in and around competing for the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Talking continuity and not much changing, there was a great tweet from Greg Rosenthal. The entire starting defensive front 7 has now played together for 3 years. The entire starting O-line has played together for 4 years. When you have that continuity, especially on the offensive line, I think it was of the 11 teams to have the most offensive line continuity last year, 10 of those made the playoffs. Like, it's so important. If you played over 50% of your snaps, basically 10 of 11 teams last year made the playoffs. I think it's kind of no reason to rock the boat for Denver. They obviously finished the season really well, excluding the last game when you put Jarrett Stidham in there. But I think they're really strong. There's a reason why they're, in that bucket of teams we really like in that second tier of Super Bowl teams. So, yeah, I think they're there for a good reason. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've done what, Sean Payton, as soon as he got here, he made the line of scrimmage just a point of emphasis. I mean, the first year in free agency, who'd they sign? They signed Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, and Zach Allen. Looks pretty good at this point. Powers and McGlinchey have been good, maybe not like, all pro level good, but they've both played a lot of football, and they overhauled the culture of Denver's offensive line room. And then Zach Allen obviously like way outplayed the 3-year contract he got in 2023. Now he's got a $100 million deal. But they just, no matter what happens, they just sort of keep investing and reinvesting on the line of scrimmage both ways, and it's paid off big time for them.
Cool. Okay, well, let's move. So part of the reason why that game was so crazy in the AFC Championship game was obviously the injury to Bo Nix from the previous week. But ankle concerns next after cruelly missing the AFC title game. Bo Nix has started camp as expected post-surgery. Are there any lingering concerns, or is it full steam ahead? Obviously, Parker, you've been at training camp a little bit of early training camp, a little bit of slightly later training camp from when we've been speaking to you.
That's right.
How's Bo been looking? Again, are you expecting any kind of longer term effects from the ankle injury, or does it look like he's recovered really well?
Yeah, the jump forward here in the time-space continuum means we have more information on Bo Nix than when we started this. He's played really well so far in camp, right? He's been full go. There's been no signs of any like limitation in what he's doing. He's not. They go early in training camp, and they shifted a little bit as they get close to the regular season, but they've got 3 quarterbacks on the roster, and when they go through 7-on-7 and team periods, and like every offensive period, it's 4 reps each. 4 reps for the 1, 4 for the 2, 4 for the 3. And Bo's he's taken every single rep. There's been no time where it's 3 and 5, anything like that. Like, he's been full out. He's been running around. He looks like he's moving great. He says he feels great. Players think he looks fast, maybe faster. And so, just like he is healthy. That's the bottom line. Now, like, long term, obviously there's going to be a continuing like thought about the ankle or his ankles, and like, just because he's healthy now doesn't mean you'll never have to deal with it again necessarily. But also, like, it's the NFL and guys get hurt, and it's a broken bone. He's had them before. He's healed just fine from them. So I think it's understandable and probably prudent to just wonder if this will crop up again at some point. But that's like the furthest thing from his mind at this point. Like, he's healthy and he's got that air of a 25 or 26-year-old who thinks he'll never be injured again.
That invincibility, yeah, for sure. I mean, heading into his third year in the NFL, so we all know about Bo's his like long time spent in college, very experienced for just the sheer amount of time and games he played in college. But what are you expecting kind of the jump from year 2 to year 3 to look like for Bo, Parker?
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating question because I was talking to Davis Webb, who at the time was the quarterbacks coach a year ago, and he told me, I was asking him about this idea that the biggest jump players make is from year 1 to year 2. And he said then that he thought that the key to year 2 was just consistency, and that the real jump in sort of player performance for quarterbacks comes from year 2 to year 3, which part of that's because he backed up Josh Allen in Buffalo, and Josh was much better his second year than his rookie year, but he really took off in year 3. And that, funny enough, coincided with Buffalo bringing Stephon Diggs there. And so Davis was sort of making the comparison of like, Diggs shows up in Buffalo going into Josh Allen's year 3. He's already on the upward trajectory, and boom, there's the sort of explosion of Josh Allen as one of the best players in the NFL. You could draw a comparison. They're different players. But you could put the Jalen Waddle acquisition for the Broncos sort of like into the same story set of Bo Nix has experience. He's seen a lot in 2 years. Now he's got this top end offensive weapon joining him just as he's sort of starting to feel like maybe he's in that sort of mastery stage of the offense. But we also see in the NFL all the time, like, part of the reason guys play sort of maybe go around the dial a few times that don't hit right away and then they do later in their career is just because it's really hard to play quarterback. And so you would think that Bo Nix will keep getting better and keep seeing more and do, feel like he's more and more in command for whatever the next 10 years, if that's how long he plays. But they just feel really good about where he's at. And I think a lot of people here expect a big jump from him just from an efficiency standpoint and all that. Like, whether that happens, obviously we'll all find out together. But there's a lot of excitement about how he's playing right now.
Excellent. Well, let's have a look. We've talked about some of the ins and outs. We've talked a little bit about obviously the Jaden Waddle trade in our earlier headline. Is there any, again, from the kind of the ins and outs from free agency specifically, Parker? Is there anybody else we should be looking out for from a Broncos perspective that may make an impact in 2026?
No, not on the free agency front. I mean, Tyson Anderson was their only one. They brought in like rookie free agents and all that. But if you're a special teams junkie, like Tyson Anderson's a good special teams player. The conversation, I think, sort of looking at the outside of that, like the thing that's been super interesting through a week and a half of camp here is that I think John Franklin Myers, rightfully so, was seen as the guy that would be the toughest to replace. But so far in camp, the defensive linemen who are in line to sort of take his snaps have been really good. I mean, Eni Wazirike has been a monster. Malcolm Roach just keeps getting better. Tyler Onyedem, the rookie, I mean, whether he's in the rotation right away, we'll see, but he's flashed some. And so it actually looks, I'm sure they'll miss, JFM's pass rush ability somewhere along the way, but they look really well positioned to get a breakout year from Wazirike and help. I think Malcolm Roach will get more pass rush opportunity this year, which, like, they have a deep appreciation for what he's done and who he is. But obviously, like, if you get 8 sacks instead of 4, you're going to be more of a name, just like to the casual fan. So what's interesting about this is, like, Dre Greenlaw and PJ Locke are actually the guys who it's a little bit less clear, like who's going to take their snaps. Who's Denver's third safety? Who's their third inside linebacker? Those are open questions right now. Right now, it would look like Devin Key's probably the next guy in at safety, and Lavelle Bailey the next guy in at inside linebacker. But when you like stacked the losses, it was like, yeah, they're probably going to cut Greenlaw as soon as the season was over. PJ Locke's a free agent. He's probably going to want an opportunity to go play somewhere instead of being a backup here. Yeah. That stuff happens all the time. But now we're in training camp, and those guys look like the ones where you're just not quite sure if that steady production is going to be there for the guys that are next on the depth chart at those positions.
Excellent. I mean, and let's flip over and have a look at the draft. And again, primarily because of moves that they made. One of them, they didn't pick till the third round. And then obviously it was, I think, a third, 2 fourths, a fifth, and 3 sevenths. Again, difficult to get. Yeah, the screen helps. Difficult to get kind of big impact players there. You know, you have to kind of strike gold or find sort of diamonds in the rough, so to speak, at that. But again, who's exciting you? Or are the players that are exciting you that you think can be key contributors from this draft class this year?
Yeah, I think Jonah Coleman's going to help right away, the running back that they took in the 4th round. I mean, it's interesting because Sean Payton has said during camp that RJ Harvey is a candidate to be sort of their third down back too. You think about catching the ball in the backfield. Obviously, Harvey was dynamic as a rookie last year doing that. But he wasn't very good in pass protection, and that's obviously a critical component of the third down life as a third down back and 2-minute back. So they want Harvey to be good enough to be able to do that because he's such a weapon as a pass catcher and in the open field. But Jonah Coleman projects really nicely into that role too, because he's probably the best pass protector in the draft class among running backs. And he's got juice too. Like, for being a young guy, it's just training camp. It's a few days. It doesn't mean he's going to be, a great player for a decade, but he's decisive. He makes a cut and gets up the field. He looks like he's got good feel, good vision, all of that in the building. I mean, they've been really excited about what he's done so far. So yeah, I think you're looking at Coleman as sort of like the best bet to be an impact player early or to have a big role early. Onyedem may well work his way into the defensive line rotation. They're just so deep there that that's drafting on a strength. Same thing with Cage Casey. He's a good player. He's got some versatility. He's played mostly left guard so far in camp, sort of like behind Ben Powers. Alex Palczewski played that spot last year when Powers got hurt, but they want Palcho to, play tackle too, and get reps there. So, whether Casey was like the next guy in, like if Ben Powers got hurt week 1, would Cage Casey be the one to go in? It probably depends on what the health of the rest of the line looks like. So I would say like those 3 guys, not surprisingly from, the first 3 guys they drafted. Red Murdoch's an interesting one just because that third linebacker spot's wide open. I don't think he hasn't grabbed that spot at this point, but it's 10 days into camp and he's a 7th round rookie. Like, it's going to take some time, but he's a guy they think can play down the stretch. And I guess you'd say similar with Miles Scott at safety, like third safety spot's wide open, but whether he's really in that conversation at this point or if it's a little bit more like, draft and develop, I think remains to be seen.
Interesting. I'm sure you will know the answer to this question, Parker, so maybe we'll let Byron have a go. We love a pop quiz question here at a Good Teams and Great Teams cover. This was the first time the Broncos didn't pick in either the first or second round since 1995. But in that draft class, they did find a Pro Football Hall of Famer. The question is, who was it? Yeah, Terrell Davis. Yeah,
way too easy. Way too easy.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, well, I say it's tough, and I just got it. But okay, Parker.
Actually, it wasn't way too easy, but we have geniuses in our midst. So.
There we go. Thank you. Much better.
We'll cut that other bit out, and then
there you go. Perfect.
Yeah. Cheers. Just an interesting little stat, just given the
no pressure, Jonah Coleman.
Yes,
right, exactly.
Could one of these guys be heading to Canton in 25 years' time? Who knows?
Dallin Bentley, the greatest tight end that's played football.
There we go. We'll cut this in his Hall of Fame induction speech. We will put this. The Pro Football Hall of Fame will come to us for this clip and this clip alone. Right, let's get into the lines because again we are primarily a gambling show, so let's look at some lines. I feel this is really low, but the line on the Broncos win total is 9.5. which we talk about disrespectful line sometimes. I feel that's a little low. How comfortable, again, where do you think, looking at the schedule and looking where they're at right now, Parker, what kind of record do you think they're going to end up with come the end of the regular season?
Yeah, I think I picked them at 11-6, which obviously would be a comfortable over. I just think it's that number undoubtedly is rooted in them just having a tough schedule. I mean, it's the first 6, it's Kansas City and then 5 playoff teams from a year ago. And then they close with Buffalo, New England, and the Chargers, the New England game being on the road. So, and the Buffalo game, Christmas Day in Denver, which will be quite a scene, I would imagine. And in between, like, they've got a manageable stretch there in the middle of the year, but man, I mean, it's a tough schedule, and so that I'm sure that's where that line comes from. But yeah, I think I think they'll be a comfortable playoff team, but they could be a wild card team too. Like that's the part of it. Like, that's a really good division, and they don't have many gimmies on the schedule.
Yeah, and then let's have a quick look then at kind of the rest of the way. There we go, get the right one. They're the third favourites to win the division, so it's the Chiefs that are the marginally favourites, I suppose. That's probably how close those expectations to be. Chiefs are the favourites, slightly behind are the Chargers, then the Broncos in third at 2-1. Again, with kind of from what you're seeing from the other NFC West teams, that schedule might be having a part to play in that, how tough it is. But again, where do you kind of think where do you feel the Broncos are in relation to the Chiefs and the Chargers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think they're all about even, which is why you see the odds that way. And I mean, Kansas City, like, they have questions, I think, around Mahomes on offense, and obviously he's coming back from the knee injury and all of that. But he's also the great equalizer. It's, if he's right and if he's healthy, he's the guy in the division, maybe the only guy in the division, and frankly, like, one of very few in football who could just take the three of us and a bunch of other folks and go out there and find ways to find completions. He's just like, he's one of those guys. He's an all-time great. So that's and their defense, like Steve Spagnuolo, like, their defense should be good again. Obviously, they've traded away a lot. They've sort of reset the deck a little bit. They're going to be younger, but they're dangerous. And I love, the Chargers. It's a big loss losing Jesse Minter to the Ravens head coaching job. He's really good. He put the clamps on Denver twice last year, made life really difficult on him. And at the same time, Mike McDaniel's a huge add to the offense as a coordinator. So I think Mike McDaniel's going to be really good for Justin Herbert. They got those 2 tackles back. I mean, they went 11-6 last year with 2 all-pro tackles that basically missed the whole season. So they should be able to run the ball. They've got interesting offensive skill around Herbert. They've got a guy that really knows what he's doing as a coordinator. They should be fun. So, yeah, I think, like, I don't know. It feels weird. The Broncos win the division by 3 games one year, and then it's like, are they going to, you question whether they're going to win it the next. But I could see that. Like, Denver's perfectly capable of winning the division. Wouldn't be surprised if they did. But if they end up a wild card team, like, that wouldn't be a shocker to me at all.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite bets one of my favorite division winner bets. The Broncos at 2-1. I think it's just really, really good value. Again, I don't think too much has changed. I don't necessarily think the Chiefs have got a whole lot better as yet. I get the return of the Chargers tackles. I don't see that then bumping them by 2 or 3 wins though. Like, equally, it's a very, very tough division, and I don't see them all of a sudden jumping to be a 13 or a 14 win team. So yeah, I really, really like the value. It's one of my favorite division winner bets of the season for sure, which is bad news for the Denver Broncos basically, because
no, we're geniuses, remember?
Absolutely, yeah. Hopefully we'll be cutting this in December going, we told you so. But yeah, I just really, really like the value. 10-1 to win the AFC and 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. They were, when we cut this, I think it might have changed slightly to 18-1, but when we produced this last week, it was 20-1. No, they're still 20-1. So they're behind teams. Like, I think they're like the 5th or 6th AFC team. So ahead of them there's the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Patriots. And the Texans. So sorry, they're the 7th AFC team in terms of odds to win the Super Bowl. Again, just feels crazy, but I guess the AFC is stacked. Again, how do you kind of have them positioned versus kind of where the rest of those other teams outside of the division are, Parker?
Yeah, right in the mix. I mean, 10-1, like, it feels like you say. I mean, that if you're looking up and down the list, like that sort of would stick out as one. It's like, okay, yeah, I could see that. Feels like you say, there's maybe some value there. Again, it's just a matter of like the role of quarterbacks in the AFC is incredible. And when you look at the Broncos run last year, obviously they played the most important game of the year without their quarterback, but also Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow weren't in the postseason at all. Most years you're going to have to go through 1, 2 of them, in addition to already having, that they went through Josh Allen, and then Drake May's there, and normally you'd have to go through one of those other guys too, and just for obviously injury, performance, and really injury for 2 of them. Baltimore lost like the last week, and then it was Aaron Rodgers instead of Lamar Jackson. It's just like up and down. Like like the easy playoff draw is getting CJ Stroud in that Houston defense. I mean, it's just like that in the division. And so you can understand, why it's 10-1, but also, I mean, it's wide open. So feels like as good a pick as any.
Yeah, again, this is one of my, whether it's the conference or to win the Super Bowl, another way I just think there's some really, really good value on the Broncos. Byron, I know you sort of, on our last episode, tied your flag to the Texans because they're in the kind of that similar area of 18-1. But yeah, kind of where do you kind of think, again, that price 20-1 for the Super Bowl kind of sits with where you have the Broncos?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Broncos and Texans, my 2 favorites in the AFC this year. We haven't actually got to our AFC East preview or our AFC North preview yet, but like I don't really understand why the Bills and the Ravens are so favored ahead of both of those teams, because I think they have better rosters and they don't have first-time head coaches. So I understand like the quarterback draw is obviously huge, but Bo Nix has been capable, CJ Stroud has been capable, and their defenses are top notch. And yeah, I just think Denver and Houston are both so well. They really remind me of each other. Like incredibly stout on defense. Texans would kill to have Denver's O-line, truthfully, but yeah, I just think they're just both so well run and both suited to January football that I would have them both favored ahead of the Bills and the Ravens. So I love being able to get them both at 20-1. Yeah, so I do have the Texans as my official pick, but I like the Broncos at this price an awful lot.
Excellent. Parker, we know you're going to be at training camp for, all the way through. You'll be obviously on the ride with the Broncos through September all the way, maybe to the end in LA from the Super Bowl. Just give us again one last shout out and thanks for joining us. Where can we follow you? Where can we catch all your coverage of the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, denverpost.com/Broncos. All of our stuff is there. I'm on X, I guess it's called now, Parker J. Gabriel. Also on Blue Sky. I've been dabbling in TikTok a little bit. So all of the social media stuff. I'm bad at TikTok, but I'm trying it. You got to try to teach an old dog a new trick one time or two.
Well, we'll get you some clips from your appearance with us to pop
Perfect.
On there. And hopefully they'll pop off for you and for us as well.
That's right.
It's been a pleasure, Parker. Thanks ever so much for giving us time. We know obviously you're busy covering training camp, so thank you ever so much for taking some time out. Hopefully you've had a good enough time that you'll come back during the season and we can maybe catch up on the Broncos' progress at some point during the regular season.
Anytime.
Excellent. Appreciate it. We are going to jump and discuss the rest of the teams in the AFC West. We've got the Chiefs, the Raiders, and the Chargers to finish off the episode. Thanks to Parker Gabriel there. Again, go follow Parker at Parker J. Gabriel on X or Twitter. And yeah, go follow the Denver Post as well. You'll be able to keep up with all of Parker's work on the Denver Broncos. Let's get into the rest of the West then. Let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs. Strange old year, 2025 for the Kansas City Chiefs from where we've been recently. 6-11. Oof. Third in the division, missed the playoffs for the first time in a long time. 21st scoring offense, according to Pro Football Reference. 6th scoring defense. It kind of had that looming feeling of kind of they're gonna come, and then they just didn't. And obviously, it was kind of then completely deflated with Patrick Mahomes' knee injury, which was like week 15, maybe week 15, 16 was it? Maybe it was. Obviously very late on. Yeah, kind of just completely unexpected. Even, a bad Chiefs season, you'd expect them to make playoffs and have a winning record. But yeah, well, how do you kind of sum up how 2025 went for the Chiefs dynasty?
I mean, dynasty, I don't think impacted really, but I think you kind of have to look at it as almost like a new beginning with how bad they were. And yeah, you're absolutely right with Patrick Mahomes. He played 14 games, got injured in the 14th, so it wasn't like, you know, they're 21st on offense and he missed 14 games. He played 14, so they just didn't look right all season. Rasheed Rice barely played, and their offense just really, really struggled to get going. Worthy played, I think, the majority of the games, but he seemed to be banged up every single week. Kelsey somehow still got 850 yards despite looking like he could barely move. Defense was good. Spagnuolo, as usual, got the best out of what he has. But yeah, it was a real tough watch on offense. It felt like Mahomes was the best rusher, obviously the best thrower as well. But without Rasheed Rice, it felt like there was no real receiving threat. Tyquan Thornton had his moments, but it was just a real tough watch. And you know, I'm not going to talk about impacting dynasty or legacies here, but it did leave me with a few little questions about Andy Reid in terms of getting the best out of an offense that doesn't have, you know, the skill players you would want. And maybe not Patrick Mahomes himself, but like it felt like this offense needed a refresh, and we'll get to our headlines.
Yeah, I guess that'll be part of it. Joe, what did you make kind of again? I guess the sort of Chiefs, we're just used to them being just sort of a juggernaut there or thereabouts, and they were also nowhere near it.
Yeah, it was a strange old season. Like, I think, you know, just looking at the PFR, it was the offense which was the issue. And it was surprising because coming into the year, there was a lot of hope for this offense that I remember a lot of people talking about this could be the explosive Chiefs of old. And they just couldn't get it going any which way. The running game was putrid. Obviously, that's why they made the changes. And, you know, we were always hoping that Pacheco would get back to his rookie year and produce that, but that just never seemed to get going. So that just put all the pressure on Mahomes. You know, you're mentioning about Worthy. It was fairly typical the first game against the Chargers, where I think was it the first play of the game where Travis Kelce absolutely ran into him and knocked him out of the game. So it felt like that just was their season as a whole. They managed to get back, you know, when they got to 5-3, you're thinking, okay, this is the Chiefs of old. And then, yeah, they were losing on the way before Mahomes got injured. So I think it was just one of them years, a down year where it can happen. And they do need a reset, especially on offense. So disappointment all the way around. But, you know, we expect them to bounce back. And we'll see if they actually are the dynasty, which other teams have been when they have a bad year.
Excellent. Right, let's get into then the headlines from the offseason. Mahomes is where the hurt is. Very good. Recovery from ACL, LCL injury continues. Avoids PUP list and active at camp. If he does miss time, though, can Justin Fields fill in? Let's start there. I mean, Fields, I think we obviously got excited about, thinking maybe he could be the one for the Chicago Bears, and it just kind of not worked out. Steelers benched him for Russell Wilson. Yeah. I mean, is this a plan B? Can Andy Reid make it work with Justin Fields? Because it doesn't feel like comparable stylistically at all to Patrick Mahomes. Guess not many are.
Yeah, I think in the short term, you know, if you're talking, you know, they have their early bye week 5, the Chiefs, but you know, the first 2 weeks is relatively rough. They host the Broncos week 1, so maybe it's just week 1 that's really tough, truthfully, which is really when you would not want to play Justin Fields the most because it's such an important game, hosting, you know, division rivals, the Broncos. For one game, I would maybe trust Andy Reid to get a tune out of him. They do play the Colts, the Dolphins, and Raiders after that, in which case you would think, well, maybe you can slow Patrick Mahomes back in if you have to miss week 1, and you'd probably do okay, I would think, against certainly the Dolphins and the Raiders. You'd fancy the Chiefs to be heavily favoured against. But yeah, week 1, hosting the Broncos. I know you're hosting, but it's still the Broncos, one of the best defenses in the NFL. I wouldn't feel great about having Justin Fields out there instead of Patrick Mahomes. But if Patrick Mahomes isn't himself, I would just take the risk and play Justin Fields rather than risking having Mahomes re-injure himself or not be mobile enough to get out of the way of pressure. Because, you know, the Chiefs' O-line isn't terrible, but that Broncos D-line is really solid, very formidable, as we discussed earlier. So, yeah, if if you're not confident in Patrick Mahomes' ability to move efficiently in the pocket and out of the pocket, I would just sit him a week at least and wait until he is 100%, truthfully.
Yeah, kind of thought that idea, maybe like punt, not obviously you could try with the game, but almost like punting the game against the Broncos and then trying to give him 3 weeks or a 4-week span to ease himself back in with a bye before it's kind of picks up again the schedule at the end of October. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the injury obviously coming so late in the year was quite significant. How do you think he's kind of come back? Obviously, the training camp clip of him pinging the ball off the back of the center's head the other day, not a great look, but I'm sure that happens, to a lot of people at the start of training camp, no matter how good a quarterback you are. Joe, what are you expecting to see from Patrick Mahomes? We've seen him play through injuries. We've seen him get hurt in games and still produce these magical moments. How do you think he's going to be for like this big, serious, long-term injury?
Yeah, it was one of them when it happened, you just think, okay, he's going to come back mid-year and get rested, and he might not participate in training camp. But all being said, it seems like he's way ahead of schedule. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts week 1. Don't know if it's a smart thing to do, but if he's ready, then you play him. And Patrick Mahomes' mentality is that kind of like, if I'm 80% fit, I'm going to go out there and play. I don't care if it's the Denver Broncos or the Miami Dolphins. I think so. I'm leaning that he is going to start the year. I know they haven't officially confirmed it, but with him being at training camp at the beginning, it looks like he's rehabbed well. He's not come out as chubby Patrick Mahomes this year. It looks like he's actually put some muscle and he's actually a lot more slim, so a lot less weight on that knee. So I expect big things. I can see this. I know he's the favorite to win comeback player of the year, so I didn't choose that one, but that was definitely like, if I'm going to choose one, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins that, even though he was only out for 3 or 4 weeks. To win, I can imagine winning the comeback player of the year, having a good year. With everything being said, with Fields, I think we'll get on to BNM coming back, but I think having that run game, if that can get up and running, then I think, as Baron said, you can get through 1 or 2 games and you can use him a lot in that sense. If your running game can get going. Looks like Josh Simmons is fully fit and starting and ready to go. So if he could take a step, there's always issues with the right tackle, just with who they've got. But I think they certainly can be a little bit creative in the run game, and how good their defense normally is. You normally have to just score low 20s and you're in a chance to win a game as the Chiefs.
Excellent. Let's head to headline number 2. Super Bowl MVP rushes to town. Kenneth Walker arrives as the undisputed RB1. Andy Reid's best back since Shady McCoy? Question? Probably. What impact do we think Kenneth Walker's going to have? He was electric down the stretch. Obviously, been real solid for the Seahawks for a while, but he kind of really exploded the back end of the regular season and through kind of the playoffs. What are we expecting Kenneth Walker to bring them for this Chiefs offense?
I think he's going to be a dynamic element to this offense, absolutely. Andy Reid hasn't had a top 10 rushing offense since 2017 Kareem Hunt's rookie year, who was kind of my other thought here with Shady McCoy, but I think Kenneth Walker's better than Kareem Hunt was even as a rookie. Last year, 38.8% of Kenneth Walker's yards were explosive yards, which is 15 plays or more, which was third in the NFL behind only Devon Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs, which I think speaks to the upside potential you've got there. Is a weapon in the screen game, does everything really that you would want him to. It was frustrating for fantasy managers for all those years in Seattle because Seattle insisted on having a running back by committee with Zach Charbonnet. As soon as Kenneth Walker got given the ball by himself, he absolutely destroyed the playoffs and he's Super Bowl MVP. This, I think, is a great move for Kansas City. You don't have to pay running backs like you do wide receivers. I think the impact he can have is more than like a wide receiver 3 would be on pretty much any team in the NFL. It opens up the screen game for Kansas City again, and I think it just gives them a back who you can absolutely count on. You haven't got Kareem Hunt slugging his way for 3 yards a carry. You're not trying to rely on CEH being whatever they were hoping he would be out of college, and he just never was. I think, dynamic elements to this offense that they truly need, and I think it ties in really well with Patrick Mahomes is, coming back from injury. They can't have Patrick Mahomes being the leading rusher again. It's just too big of a risk. So, I think it's an absolute home run hit for the Chiefs, this one.
Excellent, kind of think, it's going to give them kind of that burst that they need. Just need a bit more balance, don't they? I think certainly from where they were last year for sure. But yeah, just a bit more balance from run and pass. All right, headline 3, Joe, hit me. What we got? Better Bieniemy, Former OC Eric Bieniemy returns to town after Matt Nagy leaves town. Can the offense hit new heights? Excellent stuff. Joe, let's go to you straight on this one. Do you think, again, there's just sort of the comfort and the familiarity of Eric Bieniemy, just seemingly never going to get this head coaching opportunity, is he, really, anywhere? Again, is that just kind of getting the old boys back together and getting kind of, that leader or from an offensive coordinator position just to get things rolling again?
Yeah, it feels like it, because since he's left, I don't know, the Chiefs has not had I would say, a top 5 offense and been the Chiefs of old. We've always expecting every year to be like, oh, the Chiefs will be back, when they had Tyreek Hill, when they had Travis Kelce, what was certainly at his height, and where they were just bombing down the field, scoring 30, 40 points every game. They've not really had that. It's been sluggish, and it's always been a conundrum in, like, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, in this generation. His argument when he finished his career ever. That it's just been like sluggish, and it's just been something missing. And I think, especially last year, I think we've already mentioned the running game was just terrible. So they just couldn't do anything. The wide receivers haven't even stepped up. So getting Bieniemy in, you hope would spark that. It feels like he focuses on the run game. It hasn't really worked out where he's been since. So it might be good for him as well to be under Andy Reid and maybe not being complete control of an offense. That might be his best situation. You mentioned about head coach. I think he deserved one when he was there, but I think it's got to a point now where it feels like that might be his ceiling as it is an offensive coordinator rather than the head coach positions with the opportunities he's had at OCs elsewhere. But I think it's good for the Chiefs. Hopefully he comes in, hit the ground running. You just worry that, when he was the offensive, that was 4 or 5 years ago, and the league's changed. It's like that kind of, and his results have not been great elsewhere, but can he repeat that because he's got Mahomes, he's got Andy Reid, and he's got some of the players. So I think it's worthwhile doing it. It didn't quite work out when they brought, like I said, Nagy back to the Chiefs fold. So we'll see what happens. And obviously there's been some off-field news, which is really sad news with the Bieniemy family. So you hope that doesn't affect anything, because I know he's not been in training camp to start with. So yeah,
he's taken quite like a strange path since he left the Chiefs. He went to the Commanders as the OC for 1 year, didn't really work out. Dipped back into college with UCLA. That was kind of a bit of a mess. And he was at the Bears as a running back coach. Kind of obviously demotion last year. Obviously, the Bears running game was very explosive. Obviously, Ben Johnson's kind of scheme, huge part of that, but no doubt Bieniemy would have had an influence. But what are you expecting the difference to be kind of with Bieniemy coming back now?
Yeah, I think, again, it kind of goes hand in hand with the headline number 2 about Kenneth Walker. I think we will see this running game take another level, and that is because of the talent, but also because of the play caller / schema there in Bieniemy. I think everything will be better. It feels a bit really simplified, but I think having Rashee Rice fit, presumably, knock on wood, he'll be fit to start the year after rehabbing in prison. Not a usual path, certainly, but yeah, I think things will just get a bit easier in that offense with Kenneth Walker. It'll create more room for your deep threat, whether that is Tyquan Thornton or maybe Jalen Royals on the second year. But yeah, I think it just kind of simplifies things. And we had our Giants preview a couple of weeks ago. I think it might be addition by subtraction as well with getting Nagy out of town. He's obviously had his high points in his career, but I don't think anyone in Kansas City was mourning him leaving. And I do think there's kind of a sneaky upside to having, you mentioned Eric Bieniemy can't be a head coach anywhere. I think there's a sneaky good thing to Kansas City for that. Same with Steve Spagnuolo. It really, I'm not going to say there's nothing worse, but like you see it so often where you have a great OC and they go after a year because they're a great OC and everybody wants the next great offensive coordinator to be their head coach. But it feels like that's not going to be Bieniemy's career path, unfortunately for him, whatever that reason may be. But for Kansas City, as Andy Reid gets older, having that continuity there with Steve Spagnuolo, and I would dare say Eric Bieniemy, as long as Kansas City want him there, I think that's such a great thing. You you get that trust, you get that continuity year on year. Your line, again, has stayed pretty secure year on year as well. So, yeah, I think it's only a good thing. You get a familiar face back in there, and a man who has succeeded in Kansas City. He's obviously liked by the players. So,
yeah, excellent. Right, the fourth and final headline, offseason headline for the Chiefs: rebuild or relaunch. Lots of defensive turnover with big contracts leaving. First 4 picks for Spags. Can he craft them quickly enough? Yeah, when you kind of look in, and we'll get us into the detail of the draft, kind of what they've done, has it just been kind of a case of kind of restocking? You know, we've seen over the last few years, people go, haven't we? We've seen, obviously, McDuffie got traded to the Rams.
Jalen
Watson left. Others have gone. Like, yeah, how are we expecting this kind of defensive side of the ball, especially, to look?
Well, I think an awful lot is going to have to be on the shoulders of Mansour Delane and what Steve Spagnuolo can get out of him instantly. You know, they took him, they traded up to get him in the draft, in fact. So, 6th overall, they have to expect him to be a cornerback 1 immediately. We've got Kudo from Miami as the other corner at the nickel. Noy Williams is the other corner. It's not really your name defense as it was last year. It has name value-wise certainly taken a step back. And I always think there's a lot of pressure on these cornerbacks and DBs generally who were taken early. You know, I kind of tried to be a bit conservative with Caleb Downs when we talk to the Cowboys, as well. As exciting as it is. There's a huge learning curve for these guys. And, you know, you go from being the top dog in college football, as Delane was, to, you know, a lot of these NFL wide receivers are really good. You know, in his first game, he's going to have to go up against Jalen Waddle, Cortland Sutton, who are both exemplary professionals who've been great in the NFL for 5-6 years now. So I do worry there might be a bit of a learning curve there for Spagnuolo. There is some more younger players across the board there as well. I've got Peter Woods at D tackle, who's going to, you know, team up with Chris Jones. So Mason R. Thomas as well on the edge. So it's a lot of young pieces who I think are going to have to be really important. Maybe not week 1, but certainly after that bye week, which is early, like we said. So yeah, a lot of pressure on Spagnuolo to get them up and running really quick. I think it's a lot to ask. You know, they were 6th ranked defense last year, I think we said, and I think it would be asking a lot to be hitting that top 10 again.
Yeah, Joe, what you expect? Like I say, because of the kind of 2 starting corners, are you expecting a big drop off from the Chiefs defense, or do you think Spags has got enough scheme, experience, enough in his bag of tricks to kind of make what they've got now work?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I want to say yes because, you know, doubt Spagnuolo, you know, you're a fool to do that because it feels like every year we're thinking that, and then some 4th round cornerback from a year or 2 ago just suddenly just steps up and goes into position. If you look at the depth chart, it's, you know, the Jerry Sneed came back and he's a starting cornerback. That's not great with how he's played, but he might take that step up from where it was before. Like the defensive backs, I'm not as worried just because I just expect them to just replace them. You know, when you think of like Watson and whatnot, like they came from nowhere, suddenly got thrown in, and they stayed a top defense. The worry is probably like up front that, you know, Chris Jones is taking a big chunk of, you know, the dead cap space, the cap space there. And even though I still think he is, you know, one of the best defensive tackles, he did take like a slight drop last year, I would say, in terms of overall play. And, you know, some of the players have drafted elsewhere, you know, George Karlaftis is a good player, but he's your number 1 edge rusher. You know, across from him it's Felix and Duque Uzama, and he's not really hit the heights from being a first round pick a couple of years ago. So they're not quite hitting on them kind of edge players, and it feels like they've lost a couple of the depth pieces on there as well, who just usually came from nowhere. Because it felt like George Karlaftis was like, he didn't feel like he was the main guy, but he was like, he would come on strongest in big games, but now he's the man on probably to get sacks along with Chris Jones. So you just weird in a depth side that way. But if the scheme's good enough, then the players should be able to plug and play. But do I see them as, you know, rivaling some of the other top defensive? No, I don't. I think they could get got on any other game against a great offense. I don't think it's the Chiefs of old where it feels like they're going to keep them pretty low every game.
Excellent. Right, let's move on and let's have a look at some of the movement. So from a free agency, we've talked about Kenneth Walker, touched on Justin Fields. Anyone else in through free agency you think is going to make a difference, or is this just more about kind of who went from free agency and went from trade from the Chiefs as opposed to who came in?
I do think the one Joe mentioned there, Jerry Sneed, I think is really interesting because he's had a terrible couple of years in Tennessee, but he was really good prior to going to Tennessee. So be interesting if he can pick back up. I think he might be like one of those, I'm not going to say Jenga pieces that is that important, but if he is 80% of what he was, that's a huge addition for them. And I think a player there you could really use, but it's really hard to have any confidence in that take, certainly. But yeah, no one else for me.
Yeah, I think some of them are. I think some of them are going to start. So Tonga and Gilman are currently showing their starters in the team. So they're not household names, but we might hear about them when the Chiefs are in the conference final and they're making big plays as usual.
Excellent. Let's have a look at the draft, which is probably more notable. We talked about the Mansour Delane trade. Note Peter Wood's also a first rounder. Those first 4 picks were on defense. And then they sort of picked up at the end. They took the LSU quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. Crazy to think that they were talking about him like entering that season as one of those that could go in like the first half of the first round. And he went 2-4-9 because LSU had a disaster season and, well, just a poor season by their standard. He wasn't great. But yeah, I'm interested in Thomas, the defensive end from Oklahoma, the edge rusher defensive end. I think he could be an interesting rotation piece. Mason Thomas. I think he could be an interesting one again in sort of those Spags when he's dialing it up situations. I don't know if he could be someone that he becomes relied upon to kind of pressure in the games in the fourth quarter and make those kind of big plays. Last 2 years, he's had 15 and a half sacks for Oklahoma across the last 2 seasons. So he could be an influence in that pass rush rotation. Anybody else sort of screaming out to you as a potential difference maker outside the obvious?
I love Cyrus Allen, pick 176 in the 5th round. He just gets open all the time. Pulled this up earlier today. So this is 2025 stats. This is in the NFL. 149 players had 200 plus routes. The Chiefs' best route per man, yards per route run, was Tyquan Thornton, who was 52nd out of those 150 players. Xavier Weber was 54th. Even Kenneth Walker was the 7th best running back versus zone, but he was 29th versus man of 59 running backs with 100 routes. Against zone, they're incredible. Rashee Rice is the 4th best player in the NFL. Tyquan Thornton, 24th best player in the NFL, yards per route run. Cyrus Allen has a 75% success rate versus man in college. He just gets open all the time. He's currently listed as starting slot receiver with Rashee Rice missing that portion of training camp. I think the room is there for him to take it and run. Jalen Royals is a deep threat. Xavier Worthy doesn't play the slot. Tyquan Thornton's a deep threat. Rashee Rice plays it right now. Kelsey gets in there as well, but Rashee Rice is in a contract year. I think they're going to see what they have in Cyrus Allen really early. He's someone I've took in Scott Fishbowl, any kind of deeper fantasy format I'm taking, took in our FFCC, JTT Cup, any of our charity leagues we're all in, I'm taking him because I just think there's such an upside case there, especially anything PPR. I think he could get peppered with targets immediately. There seems to be such a hole for someone that can come in and beat man coverage immediately on the Chiefs. I think it was a real obvious point of weakness last year. Like I say, the best person they had versus man last year was Tyquan Thornton at 52nd in the league, and Tyquan Thornton wasn't a full-time, route runner anyway. So, yeah, I think the opportunity is there, and I think if there's going to be a Puka Nakua of fantasy this year, I think it's Cyrus Allen of the Chiefs.
That is a big name to follow. We will keep an eye on Cyrus Allen in the early portion of the season to see if Byron's...
if we clip it or not.
Yeah, if we clip this on, absolutely, yeah. Excellent, right. Go on, Joe.
So can I just... Yeah, I think Emmett Johnson, he's currently listed as the second running back because the other running backs are Demercado and Brashard Smith. So that's a big battle for the second. Kenneth Walker can't play every single down, so he could. Yeah. And then one interesting one, Khalil Benson, who's an undrafted rookie, is currently starting with the first team at right tackle. Yeah. So if they can pick up a right tackle as undrafted, they've hit the jackpot there. But it doesn't say much about Jalen Moore, that he signed for that big money from the 49 and is getting beaten out by an undrafted player right now. So that's an interesting camp battle to look for because he felt like that right tackle with losing Taylor, and just it feels like constantly changing and trying to put someone in right tackle. It still feels like that's up in the air and they haven't got someone started now. But if the undrafted rookie can do it, then well play the Chiefs draft next.
National championship winning Khalil Benson Indiana. So let's move on to the lines. Is that what we got next? Yeah, over 10.5 wins for the Chiefs. Coming off a 6-win season. Is that too big of a leap? What do you think of the lines?
Yeah, I think that's too big. I have them at 9-8, and that might be a little generous, but I think they have a really soft schedule for being the third place team last year, truthfully. So, yeah, I have them at 9-8. I think they're around that kind of roster right now, especially with the uncertainty about Patrick Mahomes' 100% ability / fitness. So, yeah, I'm at 9-8. 10.5 feels like a lot.
Joe, where have you got?
I've actually got them at 11 wins. I think there's when I was going through it, I feel like a lot of the Broncos and Chargers game I've just split. It just feels like they're all around that level. And yeah, it feels like everyone was at 9.5 within that division, but it feels like the Chiefs are just being bumped up to an extra win. So I wonder if people are betting big on that. So I think I had them around about, if it was 9.5, I definitely would have gone the over and put some money in. 10.5 probably the limit, but I think for this kind of division, which we'll get into in terms of the odds, I think it's going to be around that mark. And I just wouldn't be surprised the Chiefs just coming back and being who the Chiefs are. So yeah, I've got 11, but 10 or 11 is why the bookies get it. So they're right again.
Yeah, I think I'm on 10 as well. I think I've got 10 and 7 for the Chiefs. So yeah, I don't think I'll be taking it either side, but I think they will. They will be returning to the playoffs, so 2-1 on to make the playoffs in 2026. Let's have a look at then some of the odds. They are the favourites to win the division, though, 33-20 in the AFC West. I think one of the odds suggest they're not heavily favoured, but precarious favourites. I think we'll get to the end to say who I think is going to win the division. But yeah, I just don't understand the slight favourites ahead of the Chargers, which we'll get to. 7.5 to 15 to 7.5 to 1 to win the conference, and 16 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. I think they're all far too short prices. I don't think they should be the favourite for the division, and I don't feel they should be in that second tier to win the Super Bowl. Where are you guys?
I think it's just the Chiefs. That's just the thing. They've been there, done it. There was plenty of Patriots rosters when you looked at the start of the year, being like, oh, they've got some rough gaps here. Like that defense not looking good. The wide receiver is looking a bit empty. And then suddenly we sat here, AFC Championship and the Patriots there again. And it feels like the Chiefs have done that before, and I think they can do it again. So I think it's more they've been there and done that, while the Chargers have been there and not done it, basically. They can't get there. So I think that's why they have the edge in terms of the odds, is that people just confident that Patrick Mahomes and they'll bounce back, as some of the dynasties we've seen throughout the last few years have done.
Have another act. Maybe we shall see. Baron, anything tickling your fancy there? I just don't see there being any real value.
No, I mean, I have them at 9-8. So
yeah.
16 to 1 for the Super Bowl, certainly not.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the Raiders. That was a real terrible effort at that. 2025 recap, 3-14, ended up with a number 1 overall pick, bottom of the division, missed the playoffs again, worst ranked offense according to Pro Football Reference, pretty poor defense, finished 25th. Yeah, it was just Pete Carroll, Geno Smith. It was just all a bit of a shambles, wasn't it, really, for the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where. Chip Kelly as well. Let's not let Chip off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, horrendous. Yeah, they had Pete Carroll's son as the offensive line coach. Might be the worst offensive line I can remember seeing. Yeah, just nearly gutted from the top down, and they did it. Good on them for seeing what was there and doing it, after a year. Bright new beginnings, I think, is about the best thing you could say. They didn't trade any of the future picks away. It was an appalling year of football.
Yeah, I mean, the end of us will get to, I guess, breakdown of the trade for Crosby shortly. Let's move on then. There's no more recapping required, I think, Joe. Headlines, can you hear the drums, Fernando? Raiders take Mendoza, first overall, supported by Kirk Cousins. How many starts for the rookie? Let's answer that question. How many starts do you think the rookie's going to get?
The bye's not till week 13. That is normally where my thing is of Well, if the bye's week 6, week 8, we'll put him in week 9 then. It makes sense. I really don't know. I think a lot of it depends on how Kirk Cousins looks. If Kirk Cousins is competent, keeping the offense rolling, keeping Brock Bowers, Genty as the players we think they are, then I don't think there's a huge rush to get Mendoza out there. They're not playing for 2026. So I think the big thing is an environment Mendoza can thrive in. There's no need to rush him in there. So I would probably put maybe week 12. So week 10, they play the Seahawks. Week 11, they play the Broncos. I don't want to put my rookie out there for those 2 games. Week 12 is the Myles Garrett-less Browns, and then you get a bye, and then you get, the Chargers week 13. I think that might be your line there. So let Kirk Cousins get killed against the Broncos on the road, and then go, hey, Fernando, come in and play the, like I said, the Myles Garrett-less Browns week 12. So I'll go week 12 on this.
I'm going to go a lot higher. I'm sure I heard a stat. It would be the first number 1 overall pick not to start the season in years, because everyone just starts. So it's actually surprising that I know they brought Kirk Cousins in, but it's not like Kirk Cousins lights it up. So I'm just curious how this offseason will go. If it's just Kirk has 1 or 2 bad, preseason games, Mendoza's looking amazing, and then you get the fans to. So when I look at the schedule, I can see him coming in week 5. If they've got the Dolphins and Saints within the first 3 weeks, and then they've got the Chargers and Chiefs week 4. If they go 0-4 there and Cousins looks bad, then they just have to chuck Mendoza in, because the season's more or less already done there. Because when you look at the rest of the schedule, they haven't got lots of easy games. So I'm going to say he plays 13 games.
Yeah, I'm going to go that week 8 game against the Jets. I think that might be where we see him, because the week 7 games against the Rams. So Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett might be the end of Kirk Cousins' life and career in the NFL. So yeah, I'm going to go that week 8 game. I think, looking at the schedule, I think it's the picking the wins are tough. I think week 1 at home against the Dolphins is their best opportunity to win.
You know what? Yeah, what's crazy? Just talk about, which I know we chat about last year a bit ago, but they actually beat the Patriots in week 1 last year.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that they managed to beat the Super Bowl competitors. But so I feel like with this team, they can sneak some wins there, but it's just how it starts. I think if it starts 2-6 or 1-7, why not just get him in? Just let's see what you getting out of playing Kirk Cousins when you're more or less out of the playoff race to begin with. He's going to get that offensive line if it's decent. He's got to learn how to play in the NFL. Not everyone plays around a great offensive line, and it usually doesn't get fixed within a year, because there's plenty of teams which are still struggling to sort that out, especially one of the teams we're going to talk about next. But yeah,
well, let's just quick, because we just talked about if he's going to come in. What are we expecting to get out of him? Obviously, he's the first, again, number 1 overall pick. He's come off the back of this crazy story, probably one of the best stories in college football in a generation. This Indiana team kind of coming out of nowhere the last 2 years. First of all, to make the college football playoff, then to end up being the number 1 ranked team and win a national championship undefeated under kind of this enigmatic coach, Kirk Cignetti, kind of doing it without huge stars, not getting, all these 5-star recruits and things like that. And what was that? Let's pause. I'll edit this out in a second. There was somebody's TV or something in the background there. All right, I'll clip that and send it to you just so you could hear what I heard. Right.
Anyway,
right.
Sorry.
All right, about 35 minutes in it. Right, what was I saying? All right. Let's get back to talking about actually Fernando Mendoza and what the Raiders are going to get out of him. He's come from Indiana, had this obviously magical story, best college football story in a generation of Indiana going win a national championship, coming out of being one of the worst programs, in college football to winning a national championship. What are we expecting to actually see of the level of play from Fernando Mendoza?
More mobility than you get from Kirk Cousins, I think, is take 1. And expect is really tough, because I think obviously the skill players, you've got Genty, who's we expect to be really good. Brock Bowers, we know is really good. And after that, it's a lot of question marks. Jalen Naylor obviously came in for money. Trey Tucker's got great downfield ability. Jack Betch, we'll see, a second round pick, I believe, from last year. So there's a lot of question marks, but I think what you will get is Clint Kubiak, the new head coach. We'll get to the deadline in a moment, obviously, but he will scheme a game plan that will suit Fernando Mendoza. I think it will get him, bootlegs. It'll get him on the move. I think you'll probably see a good amount of play action in there, and you'll probably see a lot of motion from the players, whether that is Brock Bowers himself or whether you use your Trey Tucker, your Jalen Nailors, even maybe Deontay Thornton like that, your speedsters, to try and, get those releases at the line of scrimmage. I think Kubiak will set him up for success. I'll be really surprised if he doesn't. Whether he comes in, week 6, week 5, week 13, whatever it might be, I think Kubiak will have a little bit of a different game plan for each quarterback. And I think the Mendoza one will be getting him moving and trying to get those easy completions, get the ball moving, get them going downfield. I don't think it's going to be deep shots necessarily, but I think it'll be, chunk plays as they can get them, but more importantly, just keep momentum, keep moving the ball downfield.
Yeah, I think kind of what, last year Mendoza, once he moved to Indiana from Cal, some of the, I suppose, struggles he had at Cal was keeping hold of the ball too long, he was a bit indecisive, took too many sacks, and he grew very quickly in Indiana. Part of that's because his offensive line was just so much better than what he was playing at with Cal, but I think his decision-making, from what it shows you, is really, really good. I don't think he has fundamentally, the tools. He doesn't seem to have, an elite arm. He doesn't have this, doesn't have that, but he seems to have the mental, the intangibles down really well. Mentality, just seems to be able to stay calm in key moments, in big games. Just never looks phased or frazzled. And just, quite fundamentally sound without having anything that particularly shines from a physical perspective. So I'm really interested to see how he'll take. I think all the noises of Brady's kind of giving him the encouragement to stay patient with him. Don't thrust him in if he's not ready. We're in a position to ride this out the long term. It's not about getting that instant kind of bump. So I'm interested to see how it goes. Joe, any sort of views on how you think Mendoza will go?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you a question in terms of the last 4 number 1 picks have all been QB. So Bryce Young, Caleb, Cam Ward, and now Mendoza. Where do you think because not all of them had it wasn't a Joe Burrow kind of coming out and hitting the ground running. Where do you think his first season's going to be? Do you think I think better than Cam Ward was last year? Around what Caleb did, where you see mistakes but you can see the growth.
I think it would be better than Cam, just on the basis if he's got more around him. Obviously, they've kind of retooled that whole line. Brock Bowers is a beast. I think, he's got more than what Cam had nothing, did he, basically, from a skill position. Nothing might be being generous. We did the AFC South preview, and Byron, you were listing off kind of the people Cam Ward was throwing to it, and also the O-line was real bad. So, I think he's positioned better to have a better transition. And I'd say, probably better than Bryce. I think he would just be solid. I think his career, I expect he would just be solid, unspectacular, won't lose you games is kind of how I'm seeing Mendoza's going to be. Will deliver what the offensive coordinator coach is wanting to without making kind of back-breaking mistakes. I think that's kind of what we're going to get. And you can win with that, right?
I think Jared Goff. I was going to say, I think a great allegory for that is Jared Goff. Thanks, Joe. Exactly the same train of thought. Who, year 1 under Jeff Fisher looked like he might not make it in the league. He plays with Sean McVay and Dan Campbell, and he looks like a top, 10, 12 quarterback. Certainly he gets the points and yardage totals of a top 10 quarterback. So, I think Jared Goff is a perfect comparison. If you put him in a good enough situation or a good situation, period, I think you'll get a good quarterback. So, I really trust Clint Kubiak to do that. So, I don't think year 1, we necessarily see a top 10 quarterback. That'd be wild. But I think I totally agree, more of a base level competency than we did from Cam Ward. And we could pin that on surrounding, certainly.
Excellent. Right, let's move on from the QB. Clint Kubiak becomes coach. A lot of K's in that. Seahawks OC moves down the coast, taking his first head coaching job. A stable environment to hit the ground running. I think it is now, isn't it? I think is, we've just seen the Raiders just being chaos for so long. Yeah, it feels obviously like with this new kind of obviously the investment ownership group, etc. As part of the Raiders, it feels like things just a lot calmer.
Yeah, I think I mentioned when we were discussing the 2025 season, fair play to the Raiders for saying, you know what, this is a shit show, let's get rid. And, there was no politeness about it. There was no, let's give them another year, see what they can turn around. No trusting in that. It was, this isn't working, this stinks, clear out. And I trust, that gives me a bit more confidence in John Spytek as the GM to have done that. They've also been very active. And I think, nepotism by itself is not a good thing, but Clinton Kubiak is experienced in the game. He's been brought up in the game. Obviously, Gary Kubiak, a very well-respected OC and then head coach of his own thing. So I trust that it feels wild saying it about the Raiders. I trust this organization right now. I think Kubiak is a great OC, head coach hire. I think he's shown it in New Orleans and then in Seattle much more so, with lack of injuries, that he knows what he's doing and he can call offense incredibly well. He can maximize everything around him really well. So I have no doubt in his play calling ability and his scheme ability. His CEO type stuff, being a leader of a team, no idea. I don't think you know that until you see it. So I have no reason to doubt it. I don't think he has any flaws or, question marks on his resume that we're aware of, certainly. And I think having that upbringing of being a coach's son and being around football basically your entire life, it doesn't guarantee you're going to be successful. Not every Mike Shanahan has a Carl Shanahan. We don't know what Clint Kubiak will be, but I'm certainly confident again, I'm not expecting him to go and win 9-10 games as a rookie head coach, but I think he'll certainly be a solid one. I'd be stunned if he's a one and done it. I think he's going to have a good enough offense to have faith in the long term.
Do you want a bit of breaking news?
Always.
It won't be by the time this actually goes out because we're recording it so far in advance. But breaking news right now: Jameer Gibbs just got paid by the Detroit Lions. 3-year, $75.75 million extension with $51.5 million guaranteed, which makes him the highest paid running back in the league. Bijan had that for all of 2 days. So Bijan and then Jonathan Taylor got paid yesterday, and then Jameer Gibbs today. So quite the 3-day span for running backs getting boatloads of cash in the NFL. Anyway, back to the Raiders. Let's go to headline number 3. And yes, not breaking news. It's a week old now, but yeah, still breaking news. Just spend, baby. Ties in nicely. Raiders spend big in free agency. Tyler Linderbaum, Nakobe Dean, Quay Payne, Quay Walker, Jalen Naylor, Kirk Cousins. Yeah. We'll talk about, I'm guessing, what headline 4 will be, but do you think their approach would have changed knowing what they, knew was going to happen if they knew that the trade of Crosby wasn't going to go through? Because obviously his is a big portion of the salary, etc.
I don't think so, no. I think this is like Washington did with Jaden Daniels when Dan Quinn came in. It is, let's get a semblance of competency on this team. You look on the offense, I think it's going to be 5 new starters or 6 new starters on that's no rookies. That is just free agents. And I think 4 or 5 on defense, just free agents coming in to be starters. Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker aren't going to be top 5 players at their position. But from what they had last year, that leap is going to be huge, just having competent players in there. Tyler Linderbaum, obviously massively overpaid, is probably a top. Well, he is a top 10 center, but he's realistically probably closer to 5 than 1. But he's paid miles ahead of everyone else because he hit free agency. It's the way it is. If you are a decent player and you hit free agency and the team who needs that position, you're going to get paid a boatload. So, good for Tyler Linderbaum. The Raiders have it, so you spend it. You don't get extra wins for not spending your money. So, yeah, I really support basically everything they've done. On paper, does it look like an overspend on a lot of them? Yeah, sure. Like Jalen Naylor, you wouldn't want to, I can't remember the exact amount he got, but he got a lot relative to what Jalen Naylor's done in the NFL. But again, look at what their wide receiver room is without him. I don't want Deontay Thornton as my wide receiver too. So you pay up for Jalen Naylor because, again, he hits the market. Alec Pierce didn't hit the market. Chris Godwin a few years ago didn't get to the market. These players just don't get to the market if they're if there's chance of them being game changers. So, if you're the Raiders, you overpay because you haven't been good for, I think they haven't made a playoffs in 5 years, 4 years. So, yeah, I don't think there's really anything that stands out as being terrible business. You've got the money, go spend it. Get your team to, not be embarrassing.
Excellent. Right. 4th and final headline for the Raiders. Trade to the Ravens. nevermore. Trade to the Ravens, even nevermore. Sorry, ruined headline there. Max Crosby all set to leave for Baltimore. Pull the plug. Happy to stay or trade still on the horizon? I guess this must be what Jerry Jones has been alluding to at the Cowboys training camp, that he's been on the phone with some teams. It has to be for Max Crosby, right? Surely.
Sorry, I was muted there. I wasn't familiar with that. I haven't really kept up with Jerry Jones's comments. Not really a healthy way to live, truthfully. So, yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I have no idea. I put the question on for the headline. I have no idea if Max Crosby's happy. He said he is. But I don't know what changed between him being happy and then a trade being reneged on, and he's not. I know he is happy. I don't quite get it. I understand wanting to save face and being prideful, but if a championship contender comes in, I feel a bit bullish from the Cowboys in there. But if the Cowboys come in and say he's a 2027 first to the Raiders, I imagine the Raiders say yes. I don't think Max Crosby has a no trade thing in. So
yeah, and the price, it was 2 1s, wasn't it? That can't be the case now, certainly because of, I guess, the discovery and the sharing of whether there is a knee problem or not. But yeah, Joe, kind of where you sat, what do you think of it, and kind of how do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, I feel like I'll be surprised now if he leaves, just with everything what's gone on. I'm curious what the Cowboys would offer to get him. Like, would they actually offer 1 first, or would it be like 2 2s, for example? And is that worth it for the Raiders? Like, with what you could have gotten, can you, if he has a monster year again, maybe try and ship him out again? I know it's a year later, but if he has, sack numbers, a fairly high one, then they might be able to get a first, and you're losing out this year again. The previous trade was before the draft, so it's not like you can replace him and do anything there. So I think they should keep him. I think why not? Just as Byron said, I don't think they're going to be contending for the playoffs or anything, but you just want them to look competent and a team which has a future. And right now, just sending him to a Cowboys for nothing, is it worth it? Because probably the dead cap's already hit them this year with training camp started. So what do you actually gain from it? If he's happy and he's going to stick around, it might be next year when you. But if the Cowboys offer a first, then I might be like, okay, a first in the 2028 draft, that could be, or even the 2027 draft, that could be a nice compensation and worth it that way. I'm just curious with everything what's gone on, what would be a decent price for him for the Raiders' sake and vice versa.
Excellent. Right, let's move into then the rest of the movement. We've talked about some of those on the way in. Seems to clear out on the way out as well. Again, do you think this activity alone, has this been enough to raise kind of that floor of the Raiders squad overall? And do we expect to see just the peaks and troughs not dip all the way down to completely abysmal?
I would say it's obviously raised the floor, but how high is that floor actually got? I don't actually know. I do always worry when you pay big money for, like the Lindenbaum, I don't mind that one. I think just the Ravens just said they weren't going to pay, and I think that should hopefully help Genty just because he is a mauling kind of center, so that should improve the squad. But when it's like, pay, Quay Walker and Kobe Dean, like if they are a top linebacker, they aren't leaving. There's not many like top linebackers who normally leave, or, if they do, they've not had a great year and then suddenly bounce back. So you just worry for that kind of expectations with the contract. Is Quay to pay even a top 20 edge rusher? Probably not. Nick Kobe Dean, can he stay fit? Can he, it's going to be on him to be the main linebacker. Well, when he was in Philadelphia, he's maybe the second or third linebacker. So I'm same with Byron. Why not pay them guys that got all that money? But if you raise it from a 2-win team to maybe a 5-win team, that might be all expected for this squad, and not to be like, oh, we're going to be challenging for titles.
I mean, cause I like the moves in the main. That I think they got the right kind of profile of player. They got the right age. Like Linderbaum was 26, Kobe Dean's 25, Quay Walker's 26. They're not throwing money at old guys. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think maybe we talked about comparing it a little bit to kind of what the Commanders did with Jaden Daniels in Washington, and they kind of went to the other end of the experience scale, maybe a little bit more close to some of the older guys, and that's been caused them obviously some problems last year. Whereas I think you're getting them kind of some of these guys quite at the right time potentially. So yeah, I think they've got getting the right balance of, yes, it is a lot of money that they've spent, but I think they're getting guys who can give them 3-4 years of kind of primes of career as opposed to the tail end. So that's my 2 pence on it. Let's draft it. Let's have a look at the draft. Mendoza, we know. What else is kind of going to help? A lot of picks as well for 10 picks from the Raiders. Yeah, what else is going to kind of help them? Let's talk about McCoy. That's the one I'm probably interested in the most. Jermad McCoy. He's the cornerback who, the first round talent. He's obviously the knee issue seems to be a lot worse potentially than it was, and caused the tumble that the Raiders ended eventually at 101. Is this somebody you think this could be an absolute steal? Getting someone like Jermad McCoy in the 4th round.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, he has been practicing. I don't think he's been in full practice yet. He was rested, I think, yesterday. I don't think he took part, but he has taken part in other practices. I think he was practicing again today. Or maybe, yeah, he's had a rest day in there. But it seems, again, like a pretty sensible building. And I think that is absolutely well worth a shot. McCoy was a top 10 talent. And you get him at 101. There's really no downside to that swing. I think that's exactly what teams should be doing. So, yeah. Whatever you get from this year is a bonus, I think. See how he comes along.
Yeah, I mean, the injury was in January 2025, so he missed the full season. So it's going to be, by the time the season starts, it's going to be more than 18 months. And, ACL injury is still significant, but certainly the timelines on them aren't quite like what they used to be. I think it's going to be a full 18 months. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the teams that are passing on him multiple times might have to regret this, because I think, even if he'd have gone late 2nd, 3rd round, I think it's still been great value. But to get him at the start of the 4th, I think was tremendous value. Anybody else Joe, anyone else for you that's sort of screaming out that he's going to make a difference for the Raiders?
Not really. I think most of the players that have more depth pieces in terms of who's going to be starting in terms of going forward. There's no one currently is slotted into a starting position right now. I think Benson could be an interesting one. Again, I always look for these wide receivers who are in a wide receiver room with lack of depth. So, Jack Beck, bit of a disappointment, but he's their 3rd wide receiver. We've talked about Jalen Hurd being the 2nd with Trey Tucker. So, and people behind that, there's nothing scary. So, Philip Dorsett, Michael Mayer, he's tight end, sorry, Derek Young, Deontay Thornton. There's nothing where it's like, oh, wow, he shouldn't be able to at least contribute. So, and you never know with wide receivers, Byron mentioned one which went in the 5th round and now he's, top 3 wide receiver. I don't think he's going to be that level of good, but you never know. He might get a chance just with the amount of talent the Raiders currently have in that room.
Yeah, Malik Benson, as I say, is an interesting one. It's the career that he's had is quite interesting. He went from Alabama to Florida State to Oregon. It's like 3 premier programs in college football. Kind of year after year, and had his best year. He was Oregon's leading receiver last year, and had his best year of his career. Which is an interesting one. He's kind of bounced around like that, from a profile, but certainly, yeah. Again, could take advantage of an opportunity there, just because the receiver room isn't particularly great.
Yeah, he was one I was going to shout out as well, Joe, so thank you for that. But Kirk Cousins has already praised him publicly as well, said he's standing out in camp. Raiders beat reporter said through the first 6 practices he was the standout wide receiver. So, like you say, that room is not scary at all. So, yeah, another player maybe put on the end of your fantasy, maybe draft list.
Excellent. Right, let's move on. Lions 5.5 wins. This is a 3-win team from last year. What have you got the Raiders at?
I'm at 4 wins, so they have improved slightly, but they look more competent doing it.
Nice. I appreciate that. Joe?
Yeah, I've got 5 wins. I think there's like 6 winnable games, but trusting the Raiders to win all of them might be a bit of a stretch. So I've got 5 wins, and yeah, but I can see them being more spicy where they're not just laying eggs where they're like not scoring any points or lower than 10. So I can at least see him being interested in you see him promise going forward, even though it's still low win total.
So that 6 would be Miami, New Orleans, the Jets, the Browns, the Titans, the
Cardinals.
Cardinals. Okay, yeah, and you'd kind of have to almost run the table on that to get the over. They'll pick up a divisional. They'll pick up one divisional win. Sure, they're not going 0-6 in division.
It is the Raiders.
I don't know. That very usually give the Chiefs a scare and a test, and
could be Grant Nussmeier week 18.
Could be Grant Nussmeier week 18. Yeah.
That'd help.
Yeah.
Carson Beck week 17. That'd help.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows who the Browns quarterback's going to be in week 12? Right. Yeah, I think probably. I think 5. Yeah, 5 probably the max for me. So I'd take the under, but I don't like it. It's heavy. 7-5 on for the over though. So Vegas seems to think, well, it would 6 wins for the Raiders. And yeah, obviously huge odds to make the play, nearly 6-1 to make the playoffs, and 19-2 on. I don't think I've ever seen that odds number before. 19-2 on to make the playoffs. Right, let's go to the 22 to win the division. Not the biggest price you'll get for a division winner, as we've already covered in our previous episode. 80-1 to win the conference, and 125-1 to represent the AFC to win the Super Bowl even in LA. Yeah, nothing there, I guess. Tickling your friend, yeah, I just can't. There's no path to win the division at 20-1. I'm afraid for the Raiders. Right, the Los Angeles Chargers or the Los Angeles Charbars, depending on your love of the team or not. 11-6, second was enough for second in the AFC West in a wild card spot. 16-3 in a putrid game against the Patriots. 20th in scoring offense, 9th in scoring defense, according to Pro Football Reference. Joe, give us, obviously, you know and love Jim Harbaugh, obviously, his time as the Niners head coach. How would you assess his second year as the Chargers head coach?
Yeah, it just felt very Charger in terms of the good teams where they had a good regular season. They won some big games, especially down the stretch, beating Eagles, Chiefs, and Cowboys in a free. And then when it comes to playoff time, they just, pee the pants and they're off home. Just, again, it feels there's too many. I think Herbert, in terms of playoff appearances, when you think about the worst playoff, if you think of a 3-game stretch, is there any worse than Herbert in terms of it feels like the last few games, it's just been terrible. Obviously didn't help when the offensive line and the injuries, it felt like at the start of the season, everyone was just going down and they were just playing anyone on that line for Herbert to try and stand up, and he got hit plenty of times, but that defense certainly stepped up being 9th. We expect a little bit more from the offense, but I think overall it was a good year with what happened to them, but you just want them to actually start showing something in the playoffs, because there's too many times we get too excited for the Chargers, and then when it actually matters, they're suddenly just scoring 3 points, and it feels like it just happens every year.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned that it's 3 playoff appearances. They haven't been great, have they? Yeah, so that was the blown game against the Jags, the giant lead. Killed by the Texans. Yeah. Way through for 4 interceptions, and then the putrid against the Patriots. What's got to change for the Chargers then, you think? Because again, this narrative is going to follow Herbert round, obviously until he wins a game in the postseason. But what do you think? What ultimately needs to change?
You need to do it. Until you do it, it's hypothetical. What does Josh Allen need to do to win a Super Bowl? He needs to win a Super Bowl. What does Lamar Jackson need to do to get to a Super Bowl? He needs to get to a Super Bowl. I don't think there's any one thing that you look at his game and say, he's, thrown under pressure too much or whatever it might be. I just think until he does it, it's going to be a question mark on him, on the offense in general. I don't think there is a clear, if he irons out this one flaw in his game, because I don't think it really exists. So, yeah, to me, it's just when he does it, he'll do it. I don't have a good answer to it. I'm sorry, that's a bit useless, but I just don't.
Yeah, come on, it's supposed to be finding some great insight here. Right, let's move on.
I was going to say, I wonder if it's more mental, just that it feels like whenever one thing goes wrong, it just feels like they just can't switch it. And that's what it feels like in all them 3 games. They start off so well against Jacksonville, and then suddenly one thing goes wrong and they just can't recover. The first series they might do well, and then the second one's bad, and then it's just terrible from then on. So I don't know if it's a mental side in terms of just Herbert and the coaching staff and everyone around, where do they have a plan if something goes wrong to just not carry on and losing these putrid games?
Is getting engaged to a pop star going to help?
We'll see.
See ya. Did he work for David Beckham? I think yes. He stepped up.
On the trail afterwards, immediately afterwards,
Worked out for Travis Kelce. Won the Super Bowl afterwards as well, right? He'd won one before as well, though, so...
Yeah.
And
to be decided.
Today I learned Madison Beer is a pop star. I've seen her name before, but I didn't know why she was famous. Pop star, thanks for that knowledge.
No worries.
So there'll be no Madison Beer song puns coming in anytime soon. I'm going to have to do some research.
Yeah, I'm not
might be an
aware
actress.
This American singer-songwriter and television personality.
Yeah, Cindy's yelling influencer, so I'm guessing Cindy doesn't respect her too much.
Excellent. Right, was first discovered by Justin Bieber. There you go.
Oh, baby.
No, enough of that. Right, off-season headline 1. Coordinator changes. Jesse Minter gets the Ravens head coach gig. Greg Roman goes to New York. Mike McDaniel takes the OC reins. New DC Chris O'Leary gets first coordinator role in the NFL. First of all, any video of Jim Harbaugh and Mike McDaniel interacting is a winner. Tremendous.
It's a future buddy cop movie waiting to happen.
Absolutely. We need more of it. And the Chargers social media guys are great. We've learned that over the last few years. So fully expecting that to rumble on through the season. But let's start with Mike McDaniel. Is he the injection this offense needs?
I think so. You know I love Mike McDaniel, always having Miami. So I think he was really kind of unfortunate to get fired from Miami as well. To get the wins he did with that unit last year, I think is really impressive. I think he's got the best out of the offense every single year he's been there. Obviously, a great coach prior to that as well as a running game coordinator in San Francisco. So I think this is a smash home run hire. I know it's what everybody says, but yeah, I think this is just a great combination of players to scheme to head offensive coordinator. So I don't know how long he'll be in OC for. I think he'll be a very hot name again in a year's time to be a head coach. But yeah, enjoy it while you can, LA, would be my advice.
And yeah, you feel like, again, it's this being to try and take a little bit of the heat off Justin Herbert. We know, obviously, he's got the running game scheme. Obviously, he's got Marion Hampton in there. Obviously, rookie season kind of just massively impacted with the broken ankle that he had. But yeah, do you kind of think he's got that? Has he got the foundation there with the old line and the Hampton to kind of have a strong running game that's going to take the pressure off Justin Herbert just a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Just in terms of you see a lot of ex-players and current players, especially like all line and running backs, speaking so highly of the Mike McDaniel's run theory and the schemes he put on. That is all, there's a reason why Shanahan didn't want him to leave. There was, he tried his best that he wouldn't leave the 49ers, because I think it is that run game is his strength. So having the offensive line, I know we're going to chat about it later, but a fit offensive line, which on paper looks a good offensive line, takes so much off Herbert, because there's too many times we saw last year where he just was holding onto the ball. Again, absolutely destroyed. And it feels like most years is Herbert carrying an injury halfway through the year? And it feels like that constantly. So having that scheme to help him out to get, Hampton have a great year. I'm really curious, because same with Byron, I'm a big fan of him, but I do think he needs to show something this year, because it feels like when he first got to Miami with Tua, there was the explosion of the points and everything was going hunky-dory. There was obviously the freeze ball in the playoffs where they had that tag. And then ever since then, it never felt like it clicked in Miami, where it was the offense of old, and it was a great offense for the first 4 weeks, the first 5 weeks, and then everyone caught up and he went downhill and wasn't the same level as it was. So I think this is a big year for him. He's got the weapons. He's got the quarterback. He's got everything to show what he can do. But I think if he doesn't, if he's just the middle of the road, I feel like, could he just be one of them offensive coordinator guys for the next few years?
Excellent. Right, let's go on to headline number 2. Mike gets to pick from his menu. A big influx of McDaniel coded players arrive in free agency. Keaton Mitchell, Ali Kingold, of course, Charlie Kohler, David Njoku, there's something there. Keaton Mitchell has always fascinated me since we saw him kind of for a little bit in Baltimore, and sadly again, injury. Just kind of could tell when he looked like he was starting to have that impact as a real dynamic piece. What do you think? Kind of this influx to the offense. What effect is it going to have? And again, is this just going to speed up the kind of impact Mike McDaniel's going to be able to have?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it ties really well into the run game. Njoku maybe not quite so much. I think there's a degree of Njoku was just kind of a value piece who remained in free agency a long time. So, like, you know, he can come in and compete as a tight end who could do a little bit of everything. But Charlie Kohler is primarily a blocking tight end and a really good one. Alec Ingold, fullback. And it's funny, these Shanahan coaches who wreck the league on offense basically every single year are about the only ones who trust a full-time fullback. Not sure why anyone else doesn't catch on to that. But, yes, Alec Ingold I think will be important. Keaton Mitchell, absolute burner. Can he be Devon Achane? Probably not. But can he, you know, break a big run once a game? Probably, yeah. He has a skill set. And, you know, we touched on the Mike McDaniel scheme on offense. I just wanted to highlight this play here. This stat about explosive runs. The Chargers the last 2 years in the Greg Roman offense have been 28th and then 29th on explosive runs outside and inside. The Dolphins have ranked second in that stat last 2 years. Their O-line isn't a step above the Chargers by any means. It's probably on paper a lot worse. On paper, you look and, you know, Aaron Brewer went from being a bit of a no-name center to widely regarded as the best center in the league under McDaniel. His ability to, you know, get off his block, get upfield and make those blocks for Devon Achane downfield. I think that's going to be crucial. I think these players like Mitchell, like especially Ingold and Kohler, who are going to be, you know, you're never going to draft them in fantasy. He's not going to be players that the, you know, I don't want to make us sound like we're eggheads or anything like that, but like your casual viewer probably aren't going to realize they're playing too much, but they're going to have a huge impact on the Chargers' ability to operate those concepts that Mike McDaniel excels in. So, yeah, I think without spending a huge amount of money, I think they've really got the pieces around that they really need to.
Excellent. Right, let's go to headline number 3. Chargers invest in Darwinism. Star safety Derwin James becomes highest paid safety in NFL history. A natural selection.
Yeah, he was incredible last year. He's obviously flashed on and off in his career. Battled a little bit of injuries, but yeah, last year I think he was probably the best safety in the NFL. Maybe him and Carl Hamilton would be up there, but I think he probably shone the most. So I think it just makes total sense to pay him. Yeah, natural selection. I did want to squeeze in here. They also re-upped Khalil Mack as a veteran, but couldn't quite figure out how to phrase him into the headline. So yeah, I think bringing Derwin James, especially having him happy, having him focused, not have to worry about the contract going into, you know, his 6th year, I think it'll be. Maybe 7th, actually. And then, yeah, Khalil Mack, just bringing him back as a really solid piece, obviously veteran on that line, I think is just a ton of sense. So you lose one of the best DCs in the league. I think people would say Jesse Minter. You know, you look at the points scored, that was really high up there. I don't think you look at the talent of that defense, say, oh yeah, this is a top 5 defense. So a lot to live up to for Chris O'Leary, but I think getting Derwin, the highest paid player at his position, and bringing Khalil Mack back, I think hand in hand they go really well together.
Excellent. All right, 4th and final headline. O-line to shine. Need to fit spine. Alton Slater fit to start camp. Tyler Bidash, Cole Strange, and draft pick Jake Slaughter improve starters and depth. Jobs, this was it's just a problem all year long. So they lost Alt very early on. Slater, obviously, before the season started. The news on the Slater one in particular was bad around the nature of the tendon injury. Was like, that could be a career ender. Obviously, it looks like they're going to have him back. This, you know, what shape he's in is to be seen, but just how much of a boost is it for the Chargers to have some semblance of what looks to be could be a very solid O-line?
Yeah, I think, you know, I mentioned it earlier, just they need that O-line to help Herbert out because constantly getting injured most years or having niggly injuries, and it's after the line, you know, coming into last year, we were thinking, oh, this could be a top 5, top 3 offensive line, and obviously it didn't work out. They had a few players, and I think it affects everyone that if Alton and Slater was out, that, you know, some of the inside who might not be bigger names, but they may have had a good season if Alton and Slater was there, because it just takes that pressure off and it's not relying on them. So I think they're 2 great fits. I think the Tyler getting Tyler in a center was big as well, because when we talked about the Commanders, we were really surprised that they did let him go. and being able to get him in free agency where they're not paying a huge amount of money, I think that was a great fit as well. And then, Cole Strange and Jake Slaughter, you just see, they might start, they might certainly rotational. Both might have to start when you've got Trevor Penning just behind them, which is not always a great look. So you need to stay fit, which is most offensive lines. So you just hope that they all have a healthy year, and we can actually see the big talent, because I think they've got the potential to be top offensive tackles. They just need to show it now. I think within each year they've shown the potential, but can they actually now step up? And I think it feels like this Chargers team across the board, they've got a lot of good players, but can they be great players to take the Chargers where they need to be, especially in these positions? So I think what they've done is enough if everyone can stay fit and help Herbert out.
Big if. Right, let's go. Free agency. Again, we've talked some of them already. I think the big one for me, we've just touched on the O-line, Tyler Badash. I'm real surprised that Washington wasn't able to let him go. It seemed a strange one for me. Because he'd been solid, fun, spectacular for the Cowboys. Moved to Washington again, seemed to be reasonably decent. So I'm expecting to continue that solid play with the Chargers. Anyone, like I said, a few did go. Obviously, Najee Harris didn't work out as a free agent signing. His Achilles went, and that was kind of that. Adefe Owa left. Again, think he's a big miss on that D-line.
I think so. I think he's a really productive player. He's not, again, your top 10 edge rusher. We mentioned Quiddy Pay, or Joe did with Quiddy Pay. He's not like a top 20 player. I'd put away maybe in the top 20, certainly. But I just think he's a real useful player, especially, playing the opposite side to Khalil Mack. Gives you that double thing, double attack. Can't double team everybody. So, I think he is going to be a loss. Obviously, they brought in, we'll get to the draft class on the next slide, but I think their first round pick, he's an older rookie, so he will be expected to hit the ground running and take away spot there. But again, as I feel like I've preached to a lot, expecting immediate production from first round players, rookies, even first round players, it can be a bit of a, fool's errand. So I think they're going to need Mac to hold down that line, certainly in the short term, and hopefully it's still at his high level.
Go on, Joe. Sorry.
Paul, you go first, Paul.
I was going to say, obviously, we just shout out bets at the end, but this is one that didn't make it for me that I really, really like. Currently, a training camp holding, Tuli Tuipulotu, edge. 13 sacks last year. His year on year seems to be more productive. 4.5 in his rookie year, 8.5 in his second year, 13 in his third year. I like him at 15 plus. Obviously, that situation to be resolved, and I like him at 15 plus sacks at 9-2. So plus 450. Didn't quite make my sheet, but I really, really like that bet. I think he just seems to, again, just consistently find ways to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, no, great one. And I'm so interested how what they're going to do with David Njoku. It felt like, I'm not really, I'm always tempted in fantasy because when he was at the Browns, he always got a decent amount of yards and touchdowns. But then, and same with because I was like, I should keep Gadsden, but with Njoku there, I feel like Cole's going to play most of it because, Byron's mentioned the scheme. They're going to play 2 tight ends and a fullback. So there's only room for one of them. So I'm curious how Mike McDonald is going to put in Njoku and Gadsden. I was surprised when Njoku went there because it feels like he's behind Gadsden just with how last year went. And I thought it could have gone elsewhere. So I'm really curious with how they're going to use him in that offense and if he's going to have the same production he had with the Cleveland Browns.
Excellent. Right, let's head to the draft. Yeah, do you want to, you touched it, and obviously not mentioned by, but do you want to talk about Akeem Mesidor, Byron?
Yeah, I think he was the only rookie in his class who was born before 9/11. So it kind of gives you a thing of how old he is. Born April 2001. So I'm not linking him to the attacks, to be clear. I don't think he was involved. He is an older player. It is now 2026. So, I think it's really important that he hits the ground running. You take a 25-year-old rookie, fresh out of Canada, one of your boys. So there is going to be a high expectation for him to hit the ground running. Whether that's fair or not is one thing, but when you go into the league at 25, you better have looked good your last couple of years in college because you're playing against kids who are 3 or 4 years younger than you, by the most part. It'll be an interesting one. I don't have huge hopes, but I think, kind of trusting the Chargers a bit. And I just think I think O'Leary probably would have preferred having Oweh there another year and have Mesidor to be a more rotational player. I'm just not sure that's going to be the case for him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Mesidor, because again, he's had a very productive year last year. As Miami had a good year, but he obviously played opposite Ruben Bain, who obviously went, not too much earlier, but went to the Bucks, didn't he? In probably 5 or 6 picks before Mesidor went, and I don't know how much Mesidor sort of just sudden rise in production was as a result of the attention that Bain got. Just as a whole, the Miami defensive line was very good. So, yeah. Interesting. I just can't tell with him. I don't know. When I look at him and I watch him, he never really stood out for me as kind of a big talent and somebody that had to be taken in the first round. So I'm no expert, of course. So yeah, we'll see if the Chargers have got one there or not. And he is 25 years old already. Almost as old as Tyler Shook. Anyway, Joe, any shout outs from a draft perspective? Anyone else who might make a bit of an impact? The end of sort of O-line depth seemed to be a thing late on in the draft for the Chargers.
Yeah, I think everyone else is more or less like depth elsewhere. But if the Chargers, if they continue with what the Chargers have been doing on the offensive line, I think Slaughter probably we've already mentioned. But Burke, Taylor, Harkey, they might have to play in if players not fully fit, all its injuries are. But I think the rest of the players are drafted are just depth players, and I'd be surprised if you see too much of them this year.
I'm not sure what Jake Slaughter's major was at Florida for his from an academic purpose, but he just absolutely just does not look like a football player. I don't know if you've ever seen Jake Slaughter. He looks like he should be in a lab. He looks like a science nerd.
Oh, working in the lab, not like a Frankenstein's monster.
Yes, okay. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it does look a bit like let's just say it, a bit of a nerd.
Yeah, no disrespect, Jake. But yeah,
welcome on the show. We're all nerds here, Jake. So
absolutely.
I did just want to shout out one more as well. Brennan Thompson, who is an absolute burner. So I think he's got 4.27 speed. And again, it's that time of year where these players get rave review in training camps. I do know, pads are just coming on, but the Dolphins under Mike McDaniel lead the league, or certainly always have a player in the top 10 in vertical route percentages. Those vertical breaking routes, certainly, of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. Trey Harris didn't shine as a rookie. Maybe Brennan Thompson get himself involved a little. Again, not a player I'd consider for fantasy, but someone that might be really useful for Mike McDaniel of, go get your cardio and go stretch the field because he's got the pace to do it.
Yeah, he's another interesting one. 1,000 yards in college last year, only 57 receptions. So a big deep threat. And that's his first year he had more than 20 catches for a team who was at Texas and Oklahoma, never really transferred out to Mississippi State, and then boom, all of a sudden, deep ball after deep ball. So interesting if he's going to be used in that role. Let's have a look at the lines. 9.5 is your win total for the LA Chargers. 20-27 over, so Vegas leaning to more to 10 wins for the Chargers. 21-20 under. Odds on to make the playoffs. 33-20 on, or 13-10 to miss out. Gents, where do you have the LA Chargers?
I'm 11-5. So I always overrate the Chargers.
Yeah, I have them at 10 wins. But what's going to be really interesting, the first 2 games have got the Cardinals, Raiders. They have to win them because the stretch after that is Bills, Seahawks, Broncos, Chiefs, a bye, Rams, Texans, Ravens. So 7 in a row, which, it feels like it could be a toss-up with if they win or not. So we're going to see a lot of Chargers on the TV, I think, the first 9 weeks. I think they're going to be on a lot of prime time, which should be fun. But yeah, so there could be, worst comes to worst, 2-7, or if they're actually going to do anything this year, they could be around 4-5, 5-4. But yeah, it is a tough stretch they certainly have before they get into an easy portion of the schedule.
Yes, you say we'll see a lot of them in prime time. There's only one of those games that's actually in prime time, which seems insane. The Monday Night Football to end that stretch against the Ravens in Week 10, which
you told you.
Strange. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm a stickler for the TV.
They'll probably be the main games. They'll probably be the main games on the Sundays then.
Oh, all right. Sky Sports going to be selecting them all. Yeah, I guess they probably will with some of those games, and those are the 9 p.m. slots for sure. Yeah, I think for me, I've got them at 9. I just think that schedule's brutal. I think maybe they might win 2 of those games in that 7-game stretch. I just think they're brutal. It's a brutal run to have week after week for 8 weeks in essence. So with the buy-in, it's just a rough old run, and yeah, it does get a bit easier. So even at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got them at 9. Because even then, still got to play you, Joe. Still got to play the Niners, and then finishing with the Chiefs and Broncos the last couple of weeks of the season. It's a rough old schedule. So yeah, I've got them 9 and 8. Probably going to miss out on the playoffs from what I've got. Right, next, let's hit some odds for the rest. So 37-20, as mentioned earlier, they're second favourites for the division, just behind the Chiefs. 7-1 to win the AFC and 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. Again, I just don't feel they're in that second tier. Or probably third tier is where they are actually in the Super Bowl, because you've got the Rams on their own, then you've got kind of the Ravens, Bills, and then Ravens, Bills, Seahawks maybe as a second tier, and then third tier is you see 16-1ers. Plus, I just don't feel that that's where they are. What do you guys think about that price to win the Super Bowl?
I don't hate it, but it's not my bet. I've got obviously the Texans have already discussed for my bet for the Super Bowl. I don't hate it. I think they're kind of fine in that. It's more, truthfully, I don't think the Bills and the Ravens should be as high. And I think that second tier is maybe really big. So I don't really think there's a huge difference between them, like, say, the Ravens, the Eagles, the Broncos. I don't think there's a huge difference. My biggest question mark, I think, and it's funny we're talking about Justin Herbert, it's kind of like, losing Jesse Minter and that defense being able to stand up the entire season. Like you say, it's a rough schedule. I still have them for a lot of wins, but when it comes down to that clutch, is that going to be enough? I'm not sure. So, yeah, I don't mind the 16-1, but I'm not betting it. I wouldn't be taking any of these, really.
Joe?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think when you look at the teams I'm probably putting money on around the 16-20, the Chargers they've just shown too much that they just fail under pressure, and I just don't believe that at that price that anything's going to change. And like with that balance, I don't think they're going to be like the Seahawks last year, where they have a top 3 defense, which is like the main bedrock for their success. So yeah, I'll probably stay away from all the mid division. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the division, because I think it is a toss up between the 3 teams.
Excellent. Right, let's move on. Our best bets for the division. So I'll leave to one, my 2 not making the bets. I'm taking Max Crosby 15+ sacks as my player bet, my player prop. Max Crosby has never actually hit it. I think he got close. He's got 14 once. I'm tinging this that I think he might be on the move as well. But even still, like I say, he's had his injury problems. Hoping if he plays 17 games, obviously he's never off the field. I think he can get to this 15+. You'd think that being games a little bit more and might have some more pass rush opportunities potentially if he stays with the Raiders all the way through. If he gets traded before or during the season, could have a boost maybe. But I'm going to go Crosby 15+ sacks. I think he's one of the top tier players in the NFL. I think he might be, he's going to have a year where he gets the sack numbers to go alongside it, because I haven't been quite there yet. And I'm going to take Denver Broncos to win the division. I still don't really understand why they're third favourites. They've got the strongest defense. Sean Payton, I know he's given up play calling duties, but what it's crafted from an offensive perspective, the addition of Jalen Waddle makes them more dynamic. I just don't get it. So it stinks. So I'm going to take the 2-1 on the Broncos to win the division. I'll probably be made to look like Phil when they go 8-9 and miss the playoffs. But 2-1 for the Broncos to win the division for me.
For me, we're going crazy on our player bet. Already talked about Cyrus Allen. If there's a book in the coup this year, I think it is Cyrus Allen of Kansas City. To be the offensive rookie of the year, 100-1. I got on a couple of weeks ago, 150-1. It's come down now. It's 66 and 80s in places, but you can still find 100-1 for now. So I would recommend getting on that sooner rather than later if you want to, because I think it'll continue to come down. I just don't think it makes sense. Obviously, you've got your top name players who are shorter in the odds, but I think there's qualms about basically all of them. They all have their own issues with how much they're going to play. how good their offense is, etc., etc., etc. Kenyon Sadiq is 25-1. Kenyon Sadiq isn't even fit to go into training camp, and you can get Cyrus Allen at 4 times the price. So, yeah, give me that huge long shot, and hopefully we're clipping this next January. Denver Chargers top 2 at 13-5. I think the Chiefs are pretty... we talk rebuild or relaunch. I think they've got a lot of flaws, especially on defense. Asking Spagnuolo an awful lot to do with young players. And I think the Chargers and Broncos are just really well-rounded teams. The Broncos, especially, I like 2-1 that you've got their call on them to win the division. I think they've got such consistency on both sides of the line that it's really hard to not like them. If Bo Nix is fit to start the season, as it looks like he's going to be, I think it's hard to see these two not finishing top 2, truthfully, to me. So, yeah, 13-5, Denver Chargers, any order to finish top 2. And Joe, to finish our bets off, please.
Yes, so my first one, my play, I've got Hampton to get over 1,250 rushing yards at 4-1. If you do the 1,000, it's just around evens. So that's where I was going first. I thought, you know what, I'll get a little bit more price. I just think that running game, if everyone can stay fit with Mike McDonald, I think he certainly can certainly hit. And I did like how Hampton looked at the first year, so hopefully he can stay fit for the full season. And I think he could get fairly close. And my teams. Bet is Chiefs to be the AFC winners at 15-2. I'm just thinking what the Patrick Mahomes documentary is going to be in 10 years' time, and this is the part of the story where everyone doubted us, no one believed in us. I'm coming back from the injury. It's all scripted, boys. It's going to be the Chiefs getting to the Super Bowl. I was tempted to the Super Bowl. I just think they could lose to one of the juggernaut NFC teams, but the NFL is put the Chiefs down 1 year, so it quietens down the script rumors, the everything around that. So let's get him back. Kelsey's just married Swift. The Chiefs going to the Super Bowl. It just feels like he's just written in the stars. So yeah, Chiefs to win the AFC for 15-2.
Nobody believed in us except for Joe from Good Teams and Great Teams.
There you go.
There we go. Excellent. That wraps up our AFC West preview. Sorry, carried away for a second there. That's that in the book. So we've got 2 divisions left to go. We've got the North, we've got the East of the AFC, and then we're pretty much at football. So make sure you check out and follow Good Teams and Great Teams cover. Podcast is available, video version on YouTube, audio version on Spotify, Apple Podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate it. Anything and everything you do helps. And make sure you follow the channels and the pages at GTW_GTC, Instagram, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, more and more across the channels. We've got loads coming up. Big run into the Union Jack Classic as well. Then we're going to have 3 or 4 episodes probably about that coming up over the next few weeks with some great guests previewing the game before it comes to London. Maybe an Aer Lingus College Football Classic preview show potentially as well, ahead of Bill Belichick coming to London. Loads going on, so make sure, you've got your notifications on, you subscribe, so you don't miss a thing. And we'll see you next week for our next division preview.